Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Comic Source Comic Boom collaboration. This is your DC Spotlight for the week of September 28th, 2021. Another big week in DC, about 14, 15 books to chat about. Pretty solid week. We're getting toward the end of a couple of these minis. We're getting to the nitty-gritty and action comics of Superman leaving Earth. Still don't know what's going on in Justice League or Checkmate, so that's kind of par for the course there. But overall, a pretty solid week. What'd you think, Rocky?
Yeah, I think it's a pretty solid week too. A good number of things to kind of get excited about, whet my appetite a bit for what's coming forward. Couple of stinkers, I think, but overall, what I like about this week is that there's always something to talk about, and even the ones that are annoying me a little bit, it's there's something about sometimes even when I'm annoyed by a storyline, it does nonetheless intrigue me. So DC Comics continues to have me, I'm always along for the ride, even if some of the rides aren't that comfortable.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Well, we're gonna dive right in, starting with Icon and Rocket, season 1, number 3. Now, for whatever reason, in the preview copy that they sent us, there's no credits page. Usually, in these milestone books, at the back of the book, there's a page that's dedicated to the credits, but we don't have that here. So, I mean, we know that it's written by Reginald Hudlin. It's been written by him the entire time. Doug Braithwaite does the art. Andrew Curry is usually on the inks, and Brad Anderson does the colors. I can't credit the letterer because, again, I don't have a credits page. And also, there's somebody named Leon Chills who is credited on the front cover. So I don't know, based on the order, did he help? I mean, he's listed second, so did he help write it with Reginald Hudlin? He didn't. I don't think handled the majority of the artwork, because the majority of the artwork looks like it's Doug Braithwaite. So you would think that Braithwaite would be listed first as a contributing artist. So I think Chills must have helped co-write it, but again, I can't really say for sure. I did enjoy this issue a lot. Now, I will say that it's pretty dialogue heavy, because Hudlin he's starting to kind of veer away from what we know of Icon and Rocket. And when I say veer away, I guess that's the wrong term. He's adding more in this new version to the mythos of Icon and Rocket. The origin was pretty close. He was pretty faithful to the origin that happened in the original milestone back in the day. But now he's starting to add in some aspects of his own. So that portion of the story, I think, is what accounts for some of this, a lot of this heavy dialogue, basically. Even to the point of him referencing Superman in this issue, which I thought was
very interesting reference. Yes.
Yeah, he references Superman, and why isn't Superman around in the Dakota universe? Well, you'll find out in this issue if you read it. So, the art by Doug Braithwaite continues to be just absolutely fantastic. It's super detailed. It's very kinetic. It portrays emotion and action very, very well. And we get a good look also at the villain of the piece in his non-human form at this point, I'll say. And we also learn that the lawyer that Rocket's mother has had a relationship with, or developing a relationship with, there's obviously more than meets the eye to her as well. So on top of all that, it continues to be a very appropriate and relevant political piece with some fascinating ideas. This whole issue starts off with Icon and Rocket taking out a lot of the infrastructure of drug kingpins and the people that manufacture illegal drugs around the world. So what are the ramifications of that? And when it starts hurting the economy of big countries like the United States, then all of a sudden they want to get involved, and not in the way you would think, and somebody even says, somebody in the administration, well, hasn't this been the point of the war on drugs, to stop drugs? But really, when you look at it, the 1%, the people that control the wealth, they actually don't want to really stop drugs, not when you stop and think about it, because then the banks lose out on all kinds of money for the
Yeah.
fees that are,
Yeah.
when drug dealers deposit their money to have it laundered
That's
and
right.
that
Yeah.
sort of thing,
It's about management of the drugs, not elimination.
Right. Exactly. And so who is really being harmed here? Is it really, by stopping drugs?
Uh,
It's interesting. So once again, it's about the haves and not the have-nots. The priority is on those who probably need help the least, as opposed to need help the most. And so I thought that was really, I thought that was great. Just that quote: Every country from China to France is having similar convulsions. The consequences are worse than the actual global drug trade, if you can imagine that." And the one woman in the administration's voice of reason: "For who?
yeah, yeah,
Who are the consequences are worse for who? Well, for the people that are in power and control the money. For the people actually suffering addiction, that's not worse for them." So again, pretty fascinating. And this has probably been the issue where it was kind of most overt in terms of the kind of the political leanings of the book. But just based on the story that Hudlin is telling, it makes sense that it would be. So this continues to be a great issue. It's far and away my favorite of the Milestone series that have come back. So
yeah.
what do you think, Rocky?
I agree with you 100%. I just love this. I'm not sure if I'm being educated or indoctrinated. To be honest with you, I have heard over the years the theory that the world's economy is based upon the illegal drug trade. I've heard that. I've never, to be honest, I have no idea if it's actually to the extent to which it's true. I've watched various documentaries on it. I find it fascinating, and I love the fact that Reginald Hudlin here, with the Icon and Rocket mythology, he can take this story places where perhaps you can't take a Superman story. There's a lot of talk of politics in Superman Son of Kal-El and in Action Comics where maybe Superman can't get involved or rock the boat politically or geopolitically. But I really love the fact that Icon and Rocket here, I love the fact that this story is going to those places where normally you don't see superheroes go, at least in the mainstream DC universe. Clearly, this is a Dakota universe that is not this is not a universe where Superman exists. Superman did exist, but there is we won't spoil it, but something happens in the continuity of this particular universe that sort of takes Superman off the playing field, so to speak, in a very interesting way, involving the antagonist of this story. I really love the fact that the way that they're dealing with real world politics and the consequences of it all. I even like the fact that there was even part of it was a little tropey at first. I was a little disappointed that all of the president's advisors, a lot of them are like the typical white males, and the only sensible one was a young black woman named Adele. Although there were some president's advisors who did say, well, maybe we should talk to Icon first before we tell him to, they tell the president, we know that this Icon's been around on Earth for quite a while now, and we know that he's been around for over a century, and perhaps we should talk to him first about his actions, about does he realize the consequences that his actions against the world drug trade might have. And it really makes you think, and the way that they call in Mr. Lord, this villain. We now know that Icon has been preparing to confront his arch nemesis for many decades, based upon when Mr. Lord first killed him at the end of the American Civil War. I love what Hudlin is doing here. He's really crafting a rich history. I love the politics of this because it feels like alternative history. I'm really enjoying this. High recommend. By far, I agree with you, the best that the Milestone line has to offer thus far.
Yeah, and the other thing that's interesting about this is when you talk about dealing with sort of realistic problems, right? Like, how many times have we heard it? Well, how come Batman doesn't he's a billionaire, how come he doesn't solve the problems of Gotham City by using his vast fortune? Or you can even go back to the hard traveling heroes from, Green Lantern, Green Arrow, Denny O'Neil back in the day. How come you help the green skins and the blue skins? What about the brown skins?
Yeah,
here is a hero, a hero and sidekick, I guess you'd say, who are going after real world problems, tackling the illegal drug trade. So that's great
yeah,
that somebody's actually telling that story.
yeah.
All right, up next we have Superman number 78, number 2 of 6. This is written by Robert Venditti. We have art by Wilfredo Torres. Colors are by Jordi Belair. Letters by Dave Lamphere of A Larger World. I really like this. A quick word about the art. Wilfredo Torres art. It's not my favorite style. His art isn't quite as detailed, especially the backgrounds, as I normally would like. But what he does do a great job of in the art is capturing the body language of the actors that played these characters in the Superman movies that we all love. Superman 1 and 2. Um, and from the way he has the Clark Kent version here, or Christopher Reeve Clark Kent version, look at an empty box of French fries with the expression on his face, to later in the issue where he's looking up at the sky, when he's Superman. It's exactly as Christopher Reeve portrayed that sort of thing in the film. So I love it. Do I wish it was a little more detailed, a little more DC house style? Yes, but it's a minor nitpick, and I also think that the use of color by Jordi Belair, the fact that she doesn't go too far into the primary colors, but keeps it a little subdued, kind of sits in that nice space of, it's not hyper realistic in color, it's not all the way primary like a classic superhero comic would be, but it's somewhere in the middle, and that sort of suits the tone of the story. And then as far as the story itself, I mean, we don't know, because Richard Donner, I don't think, ever really develops his plans for Superman 3 that far. Having had a falling out with the producers during his work on Superman 2 as the director, he directed like 80% of that movie, and then despite the fact they brought in another director to finish it, it still holds up, and a lot of people think it's the best Superman film, Superman 2. But regardless of that, they never got that far into development for Superman 3. But we do know, and I think I talked about it when we reviewed the first issue, that the plan was to have Brainiac be the villain. And so it's cool that, I don't know. I guess I could ask him. I don't know. I sort of doubt that Robert Venditti had any input from Richard Donner. Um, for this story, he probably just heard the rumor and knew, like a lot of people, that Brainiac was the planned villain for Superman 3. And then when we did get a Superman 3, they did sort of take that idea. Richard Pryor plays the genius computer programmer, and, again, mid 80s, when computers were starting to be a thing, war games and all that. And they did use this idea of a malevolent computer. So a little bit, I guess, pulling from a Brainiac type villain. But this is the Brainiac that we all know and love, with the green skin and the arrogance and the computerized brain and the genius intellect, who's out there trying to collect and preserve specimens throughout the galaxy. So it very much feels, in terms of story and scope, like a Superman film from Dick Donner. And Christopher Reeve, when I think of live action Superman, that's who I picture in my head. He's my Superman. So yeah, I think this is great, and I think the second issue was even better than the first in terms of capturing the tone and the feel of the story really, really well. So I know Robert Venditti, he's of that, our same kind of age group, our generation, and so it's Christopher Reeve is his Superman as well, and so it's not a big surprise to me that he's absolutely nailing this. So yeah, I really liked it. I mean, I liked the first issue well enough. I thought, okay, it's pretty good. Second issue blew me away. Really, really great. I have high expectations for the continuation of the series, and great main cover by Ben Oliver too. It's really, really fantastic. So
it really is. Yeah, I share your sentiment. It's funny. As I would put it here, I almost felt like I felt like it had poor special effects when I read this too, and I mean this I mean that in the nicest way. I mean, there's even a scene here that I'm showing now with Superman. There was that scene in Superman 2 where he rips the S off his chest and he uses it as sort of like a net, and he actually does that same move here against some of Brainiac's sort of like robotic duplicates there, and it's zaniness. It's got its craziness about it. I would much have preferred the plot line of this Brainiac story as opposed to what we got with the Richard Pryor movie on Superman 3. But I don't think they would have quite had the special effects to be able to pull it off. I'm glad that this is in a comic book form. My favorite moments are the ones with Lex Luthor, the narcissistic, that Gene Hackman is Lex Luthor. I mean, with Superman asking for Lex Luthor's help. I mean, that dialogue is so excellent. You pointed out the scene with the French fries. I mean, the scenes between Lois and Clark. This is all Christopher Reeve, Margaret Kidder, Gene Hackman. These are the characters. This is really a hearkening back to that 70s zeitgeist, that feeling of, right back to the beginning where you really feel like a man can fly for the first time. And again, and the art was just fantastic. Jordi Berler and the colors, everything here basically fits. Even right at the end there, where Superman surrenders to Brainiac because he wants to protect the people. It feels, there's a simplicity to the plot here that puts a smile on my face. But it's so Christopher Reeve-esque Superman, and it really is. It's a high recommend. Anybody who's a fan of Superman and maybe doesn't regularly read comic books, but you're likely a fan of Christopher Reeve, this is definitely, an issue that you want to get. And you could actually pick up this issue and not read the first. And I thought it was actually surprisingly self-containing, to be honest. In a sense, you get a sense of the gravitas, even in the absence if you haven't read the first one. So it was very well done.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And it's a good point. I'm glad you mentioned him giving up, surrendering at the end when Brainiac threatens all the citizens of Metropolis if Superman doesn't give up. Yeah, very much a Christopher Reeve Superman moment. You see it coming. I could picture Christopher Reeve acting out this scene in my head. So yeah, it came across as very authentic. So fantastic job from the entire creative team. All right, next up we have another Superman book, and this one was also done really, really well. So kudos to the entire creative team on Action Comics 1035. Phillip Kennedy Johnson, the writer, Daniel Sampere on the art, and we know he was on the show recently. He talked about how he's finishing up his run on Action Comics and moving on to something else that we'll hopefully hear about soon. Adriano Lucas handles the colors on this issue. Dave Sharpe on letters. It's World War Rising Part 6. Action-packed and pretty emotional. What'd you think, Rocky?
Oh, man. Phillip Kennedy Johnson, it's been one of those things. We've reviewed every single one of his issues, and it seems like he keeps getting better and better and better. And I even noticed this. I had time this past weekend. I actually read his 6 issues of Alien. For over at Marvel. He's writing that. I was surprised how well he nailed Alien. And this Superman, I used the phrase before. It's an oft-repeated phrase I use. I say it too damn much, but I always say putting lipstick on the pig. I said Phillip Kennedy Johnson has put lipstick on the pig of Bendis' Superman run. And I have to tell you, if there's any doubt, I read this issue and the emotion in this issue was just incredible. Superman showing up, rescuing Lois. Theola is desperate. She's a pawn of Mongols. She feels helpless. She's a Phaelosian. Mongol setting this trap by sending these Phaelosian refugees to Earth. Clearly is a trap for Superman to lure him to War World, and it's working. And Superman doesn't care. And John Kent knows it's a trap. He's worried he's going to lose his father to the future because he's read about his father's fate when he was in the 31st century. Lois Lane is even a little bit worried. There's something different this time. Will Superman return if he goes? Even the Justice League show up in this issue, and there's great moments with the Justice League that say, "Look, you took the Genesis fragment from the United States in their diplomatic wranglings with the Atlantis. You're no longer on the Justice League, Superman, because we need to distance ourselves from you." So the Justice League need to remove Superman from their league. Batman wants to help Superman. And Batman even alludes to Superman that I know you've got the authority, because Batman is aware that Superman has put together another team to go to Warworld. But meanwhile, what frames all this, so much happens in this issue, is number one, beautiful art by Daniel Sampere. My God, this art is fantastic. You feel the emotions. You feel the emotions of Theola as she's desperate, as Mongol kills her. He's willing to sacrifice her, and Superman doesn't allow her to die. He takes a lot of the instead of her self-destructing, Superman absorbs a lot of the energy that would normally kill her. You can see the gravitas, the lengths of which Superman will go. Superman's vow to the two dead theologians, saying, I promise you, I will find out who your names were. I will remember you. I'm going to go to Warworld. I'm going to win. I'm going to defeat Mongol. I'm going to remove your chains. I'm going to come back. This feels so epic, Superman. It's incredible. The way that he talks to his son, John Kent. This has emotion. This has beautiful art. This has gravitas. And, when we interviewed Daniel Sampere there, he tweeted about that scene where Superman is with Lois Lane. There's a beautiful scene there where Superman shows up to talk with Lois, and Lois she wants to just ask him, did you go to Crypto? Did you say goodbye to Crypto? Did you do this? Did you do that? She's almost trying to avoid saying goodbye to him, but he just interrupts her and says, "Fly with me." And they fly, and it's a husband and wife moment. And I felt a husband and wife moment of two people who love each other in a way that, frankly, I never felt when Bendis wrote it, because Bendis's dialogue always took me out of the intimacy between Lois and Clark. But Philip Kennedy Johnson nails it here. He does a really good job, and the artists just show so fantastic. Superman says, "I love you," and Lois Lane says, "Show me," and just a beautifully epic. Very very classy, artistically rendered love scene between Lois and Clark, and I love this issue. I absolutely love this issue. I'm rooting for Superman on Warworld, man. I'm rooting for Superman, and I feel that Superman's gonna win. And at the end, when we got the new Authority team, Midnight or Apollo and Natasha Irons and the rest of the new Authority team that currently is being scripted by Grant Morrison, there seems to be a little bit of continuity issues there. This is a younger looking Superman than the Superman we see in Superman in the Authority, but I'm prepared to let that go. I'm really enjoying what PKJ is doing here, and man, I'm definitely looking forward to Warworld, and I want Superman to kick Mongol's ass. I feel that this has gravitas. Very impressive.
Yeah, I sort of agree with you, and I sort of don't. Because there are multiple continuity problems this week, not just with Superman, but this is one of the more egregious ones. That clearly is a much older Superman. That story feels like it takes place so much farther in the future, where Superman is more cynical and more jaded. We get as you said, a very heartfelt moment between Lois and Superman. This is not like, forget about the gray in his hair that Mikhail Yanin illustrates him with in Superman and the Story. Like forget about anything to do visually with that clearly being an older Superman and this being a younger Superman. Let's just look at his dialogue, his vocabulary, his language, the way he carries himself. That is clearly a different Superman in terms of who he is and how he carries himself than the Superman here. But yet we're supposed to believe it's the same guy. He now all of a sudden here's that Authority team that he put together, and we see the whole team at the end of this issue, as opposed to even over after issue 3 of Superman and the Authority, the whole team hadn't been put together yet. So it's a bit of a problem. Like when I saw him show up here, I'm like, wait, what? What the hell is going on? So it doesn't work, and it feels so much like, again, moving things around on the game board, DC editorials moving things around on the game board to make what they came up with in Future State fit. And we know that Future State, part of what Future State was from the work that was already done on 5G that got basically trashed. It got thrown away when Didio got fired. And so it's not a real surprise that when they're trying to fit all these things together, there are gaps and things that just don't work. I feel like, okay, I can let one thing go, I can let two things go, but when they start piling up, it's the confluence of them. It's the preponderance of them where after a certain time, I'm just shaking my head, going, no, this doesn't make any sense. Like maybe if it was just the Superman and the Authority thing, I'd be okay with that. But then also, if you recall, when Philip Kennedy Johnson, when he finally got finished with that first story arc where John Kent was, woe is me, my dad's going to die, blah, 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 that just felt frankly bad that we didn't really care for with the Godlewski and Phil Hester art. When he got done with that and we finally started getting a real true Superman story, Batman showed up, and one of the things that they were doing, if you remember, was Batman was having Superman go and fly and test his strength and what have you. And again, it's sort of, I feel like the reason that's done, and it's mentioned again here by Superman in this issue, and it's mentioned in the Authority, but again, that's supposed to be Superman in the Authority. It's supposed to be so far into the future, you could maybe understand why Superman's powers are diminishing, but that's been brought up time and again, right, throughout these 6 issues of War World Rising. Oh, we don't know why, but Superman, apparently your powers tend to be draining, they're failing, they're not as strong. And all that to me feels like just an excuse for why can't Superman just go, and to your point, just go and kick Mongol's ass? This shouldn't be that hard, right? This is Superman. And in my mind, regardless of how many times they keep planting that seed in my head of, oh, Superman's powers are diminished, he's losing his powers. In my mind, because Mongol, despite the fact that he was always supposed to be on the dark side level, even DC, and it seems like they're finally fixing that. Even Darkseid himself was never really on Darkseid level, never came across as powerful as he should have been.
Yeah.
So how can I think that Mongol, who's a lesser Darkseid, is really that big of a challenge for Superman? Is he a threat? Would it take a couple issues for Superman to defeat him? Sure. But is it this long, drawn out, Superman's trapped on War World for whatever it is, weeks, months, years, we don't know. But the whole point that I'm getting at is because they came up with this crappy idea of Future State and told a crappy War World story in Future State of Superman, being stuck there for so long, his costume's gone. We want to draw him in these skimpy outfit with gladiator chains and barbarian Superman. Oh, what a cool idea. I didn't like it. It wasn't good. And so now you have to do all this maneuvering like, oh, Superman's, he's older and he's losing his powers, and so he put together this Authority team. Well, we never even saw the Authority in Future State, so how does that fit in? Plus this idea of him being depowered or less powerful, so that you do have a reason why he's stuck there, and to tell a long story. And again, like one thing, okay, two things, maybe that's too many, and now it's multiples, and that's where I'm. And it's not that I'm not enjoying this, but that's where I'm like, I can't wait for this to be over. I can't wait for them to finish telling the story of whatever they need to tell, so we know that Future State's not going to happen, and we could just move on without telling stories that have to serve some editorial purpose because we decided to do Future State, which, the longer we get from Future State and the more it continues to influence stories that need to be told in the now, the more I dislike. Like, I already don't like Future State, but the more I think it's one of the biggest mistakes DC's ever made. It's just so bad that it's impacting stories in a negative way. Yeah. So did I enjoy this issue? Yes. But the biggest thing I feel is that I wish it wasn't necessary. I wish we could just get Philip Kennedy Johnson telling the story that he wants to tell. And there's little parts of it I don't really agree with the Justice League showing up. I don't feel that's in character for the Justice League to show up and go, sorry, Superman, you went and took the Genesis fragment, so we're going to kick you out. Doesn't ring true to me at all.
I would have thought they would have. I would have thought the Justice League actually would go and help him on War World. To be honest with you, I don't think they need it on Earth. To be honest with you, I don't think Leviathan is that much of a threat. But anyways, yeah,
exactly. But that doesn't suit the narrative of what we saw in Future State. So how can that happen? Yeah. Hey, if he needs to go take out Mongol, they'd take him out that much faster if everybody went. It'd be over in an hour, and then everybody'd be free, and then you're done. But again, moving these pieces around on the board, well, let's kick him out of the Justice League, so that explains that. all because Bendis aged up John Kent, and we want John Kent to have his moment in the sun, and we'll talk about that when we get to Superman, Son of Kal-El. So, but that's the problem I have with it. It's not the story in and of itself. It's the situation. It's the current status of the DC universe, and all these different things that are forcing specific story choices onto Phillip Kennedy Johnson, where he doesn't just get to give me a good Superman story without all these machinations that need to be put in here so that it makes sense in continuity. Because even when you do it, even when you are moving all these pieces around and trying to line everything up, it still doesn't line up.
Yeah.
The edges still don't match,
Yeah, it's very messy. No question, it's messy, and I think readers viewpoints are gonna mileage is gonna vary on that depending on how. I mean, Grant Morrison is always a little bit of a wild card with his storylines at the best of times, and I think the easier one can simply just focus on maybe just the story PKJ is trying to tell. You might be tending to enjoy the story just a little bit more, but we shall see. We still have one more issue left on the Grant Morrison Superman and the Authority, so who knows? Maybe there's going to be some de-aging of Superman shenanigans with that, or it's going to get worse. I don't know.
Yeah, and when I do just focus on the story that Phillip Kennedy Johnson is, and try to put all the other stuff aside, I do feel better about the story. But the thing I keep coming back to when I focus on that is, well, that should be about 2 issues. It shouldn't take very long for Superman to defeat Mongol. It just shouldn't. So that's where I come out on that. But regardless, I would buy this just to look at the Daniel Sampere art. Like when Superman swoops in front of John and blocks that punch from Theola. I mean, that's just a fantastic scene as the force of the punch radiates out. That's great. There is a backup story with who is it, Jimmy Olsen and the Guardian, which it seems like it's starting some new sort of story, Tales of Metropolis. It seems okay. It felt very Triangle era of Superman, and that makes sense because Guardian was a big part of that era, as was Jimmy Olsen. So if you're a fan of that era, like I am, you probably will enjoy this. And if you're not, maybe it won't do quite as much for you. But it's written by Sean Lewis, the art is by Sammy Basri, colors are by Ulysses Areola, and letters are by Dave Sharpe. So I enjoyed it well enough. I still would prefer to have the comic cost $1 less and not have the backup, because even though it's mildly entertaining, it's not, to me, it doesn't add that much value to the book.
Yeah, I agree with you. I just sort of skim right over the Jimmy Olsen, the Guardian thing. To be honest with you, why are we having this backup? I'm so excited about the War World thing. I think just when it's starting to build up something good, some hype, why don't we have more War World story? I think we're just starting to get really wound up on the whole Superman is finally leaving Earth, going to War World. That story really seems to be finally taking off, and because we've waited a long time since Future State. Future State teased some pretty awesome Mikkel Janin art with Superman battling on War World, and we're Superman still isn't on War World yet. and I just, not to take anything away from Sean Lewis and the creative team and the backups, but I still feel like, man, oh man, this is just not what I want to read right now in Superman. And maybe at some point I'll read the backup more fully, but I didn't do this justice because I couldn't. I mean, it's such a jarring shift to go. I'm so excited when I'm done reading the main Superman story in Action Comics, and then all of a sudden I got to read Jimmy Olsen. Come on, like, sorry, I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. But I promise Sean Lewis I'll read the backup next time.
All right, on to the next book we're going to talk about. It's Mr. Miracle, The Source of Freedom #5 from writer Brandon Easton. We have Fico Osio on art, Rico Renzi on colors, and Rob Lee on letters. So this is a 6-issue mini. So this is the next to last issue of the series. What do you think, Rocky?
Well, where does one start here? Well, just let me get started here. My apologies. I just, for those listening on the podcast, we get a lot of answers. We got a lot of answers to some of the questions I've been having. In particular, we were wondering, this Mr. Miracle, this Shiloh Norman, doesn't seem to remember much about his past. He doesn't seem to. He doesn't know Scott or Scott Free or Big Barda, and didn't really know Oberon, and he doesn't really know a lot of things that we would expect him to know, and Oberon here, actually, from last issue, they need to travel to New Genesis to confront Never. And Oberon, it's kind of comical, he built out of an old Chevy truck, he built a spaceship. Only Oberon can build a dimensional traveling vessel from the parts of an old pickup truck. But that's what he does. And they end up traveling to New Genesis, where Shiloh ends up meeting up with Orion, and they end up battling the forces of Never, and Never Free. And this is where Oberon explains to Shiloh Norman why he doesn't remember everything, and he uses the analogy of a donut, a glazed donut, that's I guess that's Oberon's way of explaining the new omniverse. that basically your memory, I guess if your memory is the entire donut, and maybe what you remember might be one of the sprinkles, but your mind might encompass all of those sprinkles, but you just don't access all of those memories at once. And that's basically the omniverse. And it's a little bit weird. I still don't know why some people remember more and some people remember less. I guess some people remember all parts of their donut and some people don't. I don't know. I'm trying to use the analogy that Oberon has. Still seems a little bit odd to me. It still seems a little bit off. I'm not really sure if this Shiloh Norman is on Earth Designated 0 and he doesn't remember much about New Genesis or Orion, or he doesn't remember much about Scott Free or Big Barda. What about the rest of the DC universe? So I got a lot of questions that I still have some questions that have to do with the larger aspect of the DC universe. But in any event, we get the Mobius chair here. And the Mobius chair obviously is a device used to travel through time and space. And Shiloh sits on the Mobius chair in this issue to try to find out more about Never Free. And he finds out that he ends up traveling to a point. They end up traveling to a point in time just before when Never Free left her future, because she's actually from a future point in time to come, and she left the future to come back to the past to kill Shiloh Norman, because she blames Shiloh Norman for her galactic imperium being destroyed. Because in the future, apparently in the future, Never Free remembers her parents, Scott and Big Barda, leaving to go do some big battle and some big crisis. I'm assuming that might be them leaving to maybe at some point during maybe Death Metal and an aspect of the multiverse. This version of Scott Free and Big Barda left their daughter Never in her world, and they went off and got killed, and she created a galactic imperium in order to honor her parents, Scott Free and Big Barda. And ultimately there was a civil war that overthrew Never Free, and that civil war, the leader of that led that civil war against her was apparently Shiloh Norman. And that's why in her future, in Never's world, there are flags with Shiloh Norman on it, and the people on her planet, a lot of them love Shiloh Norman. And so this issue ends with Shiloh Norman and ultimately Never Free. They're going to be doing battle on her New Genesis in her time. So there was a lot of there's been just a lot of shenanigans here in terms of traveling through different spaces and time on the with the Mobius chair. I thought it was I thought it was a little bit, maybe a little bit confusing. There was some source wall energy that needed to be accessed for the Mobius chair, in order to travel 1,252 years in the future. They needed to do certain things with source energy, so they needed to travel to the source wall, which is the boundary between multiverses, and then access some energy in order to go to Never's world. and ultimately that's where they've ended up, and now they're in the present. And never is now confronting Shiloh and Oberon as this civil war between Navir's galactic imperium and Shiloh's forces now are going to be battling against each other. This is the 5th issue. There's one issue left, and I guess they're battling for the future. I think overall I'm a little bit critical of this issue because I'm a little bit confused. I think that I wish writer Brandon Easton was a little bit more clear. I don't like the lack of clarity on exactly what Shiloh Norman knows. I don't know why he had to make this so confusing. I don't know why it was necessary for Shiloh Norman not to remember. It just seems like an unnecessary plot point. Why have him not remember all this stuff? It just seemed rather absurd to me why he can remember some things and not the other. It just seemed like a very cheap way to have a big revelation when it's not that big of a revelation. I actually feel like Shiloh Norman is kind of a fool for not remembering all this. It just seems a little bit odd to me. I would have given the character more gravitas had he remembered more of the legacy of Mr. Miracle. In any event, I'm a little bit. It seems like a little bit much, this issue. I was a little bit confused, a little bit disappointed. The art was, even by Fico Ossio's art, was a little bit choppy at parts, but the coloring by Rico Renzi was amazing. It was really amazing. In fact, it actually brightened up some of the more choppy art in places. So overall, it was kind of meh for me, but color-wise, it really popped off the page.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. This is probably the weakest issue. I don't know that I would agree on the reasons, and I don't know that I would agree that I feel like Shiloh Norman is less of a character because he doesn't remember. It was confusing. It didn't make a whole lot of sense for me. Like, especially when Never goes to the graves of her parents and there's nothing there. To me, the logical thing is, so this Never is not from this reality. She's not from this part of the omniverse or the multiverse or whatever. And so why would Shiloh remember her? Not only has she traveled back in the past, she's hopped timelines or universes or multiverses or whatever. That to me would make a lot more sense, as opposed to there's some sort of weird timeline or life that Shiloh Norman has read. I mean, basically what you're telling me is Shiloh Norman is Kang, and he has all these different timelines, and so this Shiloh Norman here hasn't actually, at this point in his life, met Orion or fought any of this stuff, so he doesn't have any memory of that. Yeah, that's unnecessarily complicated. It 100% is. It's why nobody can really understand or explain Kang's timeline and history over in the Marvel universe. And when you try, you end up with this giant 7-page entry in the Marvel handbook because it's so convoluted. It's not necessary. We fell in love with this story because of the characterization of Shiloh Norman and the emotion of him and how he was grounded, how grounded the story was, and everything in those first few issues that Brandon Easton has given us. And he did a good job of giving us those things and making us care about Shiloh Norman to the point that we're not saying this particular issue is terrible, but it definitely is a little bit weaker. And so what I'm hoping is that the final issue will pull it all back together, because this was a little bit of a downturn, and it felt like unnecessary because, like Rocky and I both said, it feels like this is convoluted just for the sake of being convoluted. It doesn't, at least so from what we know so far, there doesn't seem to be an in-story purpose for choosing to make it this confusing. And especially when you're talking about how it really felt like a very clean story up to this point, with Shiloh Norman really becoming sort of a legacy character for Mr. Miracle, which he's never felt like that before. To me, Mr. Miracle's always felt like, hey, Mr. Miracle is scot-free, and Shiloh Norman isn't really that connected to him, right?
Mm.
So I think that, this was a bit of a misstep. And, it wasn't terrible. But, it was lacking something.
Well, I
Some
mean, when his
some
Oberon's
sort of.
yeah, but
Go ahead.
Oberon's explanation when he says about the donut, you only lack the proper perspective to fathom the situation, as if somehow if Shiloh gets a different perspective, he's going to remember everything. That's just nonsense to me. If the whole thing was just unsatisfying, like why he couldn't remember. But anyways,
Yeah,
so
the thing it's miss it's the story's missing the humanity that we got in Shiloh Norman. That relatability that we got from Shiloh Norman that made us invest in the character that we had in the first couple of issues. So that's not to say that Brandon Easton can't bring that back around in the sixth issue and tie it all up and make it make sense. Um, but yeah, I don't know why I don't know why it was paced this way. Um, Not sure. It feels like he's given himself a tougher task than is necessary. And I agree with you about the art too. And the Fico Ossio art, for the most part, has been fantastic the entire time. And this one, it feels a lot more choppy. But again, I'll go back to the fact that those early issues, the art had time to breathe because you got some character moments. And maybe the whole reason that Brandon Easton gave us those character moments and we got the character moments visually from Ossio was because they knew the back half of the series was going to be, jam packed with all this action, which it's okay if you do things like that. Um, but you do run the risk of having it feel like it's not paced evenly, which I think is sort of what we're feeling. So I still recommend the series overall, but I reserve the right to change my judgment on it or my grade on it based on how the last issue goes. If it wraps it up satisfactorily or not. So I guess we'll have to wait and see. All right, up next we have Batman versus Superman number 22. So this is the final issue of Gene Luen Yang's run and the final issue of the series for now, at least. So Gene Luen Yang is the writer. Paul Pelletier handles pencils. Keith Champagne on inks. Hi-Fi on colors. Seda Temofonte on letters. It's a standalone story. It has Calendar Man and Mixius Pitalik. And I really wonder about this story. I do. I'm not sure what the purpose is. Like, if Gene Luen Yang was leaving the series, and why didn't you just have it end after he told his one story arc about the archive of worlds or whatnot? This is sort of similar in a way in that Mixius Pitalik gives Calendar Man the ability to very meta ability to be able to look from one page to the next or look outside the panels. He doesn't actually know he's in a comic. He's just Mixius Pitalik has told him that life is arranged into boxes, those boxes being the panels of the comic. So it's pretty meta, and it allows for a really fun story and some really crazy hijinks as Calendar Man, will swing his fist at the bottom of a panel because he's punching somebody in the panel below. But when you're reading it, from side to side, basically, Calendar Man is in a way sort of time traveling, doing things to affect a character sometime out in the future. So it gets a little meta, and it's certainly fun in that way. But at the end of the day, you end up feeling like, all right, what was the point of that? I guess to remind us that comics are supposed to be fun. So, I mean, it was fine, but again, I'm curious why if Gene Luen Yang was having to leave the title because of other commitments, I think they should have just ended it at 21. I'm not sure. I mean, do you throw this in the collection of the Archive of Worlds because it's wildly out of place, even though the fact that you're breaking panels and doing things that are sort of meta ties into that a little bit. But this is much more overt than the story in the Archive of Worlds. But either way, at least we got a chance to see some more fantastic art. And this version of Calendar Man's actually never been my favorite. I do sort of, and Mixius Pitalik even talks about the crazy costumes that Calendar Man has have. I do sort of like the old costumes, not the flower one, but the one where he had the calendar on his forehead and the numbers on his belt and on his shoulder pads.
right.
That from the 80s, that's my favorite Calendar Man costume. But yeah, this was okay. I mean, it was fun, but ultimately not really memorable. So, what did you think, Rocky?
I laughed out loud reading this. what Gene Luen Yang does right here is that he makes this a done in one. This is a single issue, and it's a story, and it ends, and it's great. And that's what I wish the first time. He spent like, what was it, 7 or 8 issues on that one long story about with the film strip villain there, which was awesome and cool. The way they broke the fourth wall and jumping from film strip to film strip, and with different ways of accessing the multiverse. Yang has done a good job in his first set of stories, comparing the multiverse to almost like the different types of film strips, so you can jump from one movie to the next, and you jump from one universe to the next that way. Here, he does it with Mxyzptlk comparing the multiverse almost to like little boxes. He tells Calendar Man, like, because Calendar Man, he knows exactly what to say to Calendar Man, who ends up being killed by Joker toxin. He resurrects Calendar Man, and because a calendar consists of little boxes. Well, that's a good way to conceptualize the multiverse. Each box is its own kind of universe, maybe. And so, and the way that he ingeniously uses it, where Calendar Man can literally jump into the future by knocking out his villains, or by swinging on the next box. I mean, again, this is a story that can only be told in a comic book, utilizing the comic book medium, and it's fun, and it's funny, and it's even and of course, leave it to Batman to figure out a way to defeat him by chopping off Calendar Man's arm, and the way Calendar Man beats up both Superman and Batman by beating them by hitting by all the panels, the middle panels where Batman and Superman are, and then Calendar Man is all around, is surrounding the middle panel and literally punching through the panels. And it's comical. It's funny. It's something that, Mxyzptlk or Mxyzptlk would do. And that the fact that he's behind it is all the more funny. Kite Man, Firefly show up. This was really great. This is breaking the fourth wall. This is a classic modern day Silver Age tale, and this was a lot of fun. And kudos, this is a done in one story. That's what I like about it. We don't need more of it beyond that. The funniest scene is when Calendar Man, to defeat Superman, pushes instead of attacking Superman, he goes to the next. He reaches below the next onto the next panel and pushes Superman's head down as he's using his super cold breath, and Superman actually ends up spraying himself with super cold breath on the even lower panel. It's just hilarious. I don't know. I thought this was funny, and I'm curious to give it to my wife, who doesn't. She always says she doesn't know how to read comic books. I'd be curious to know if she could catch on with what went on here. But it's a lot of fun. I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, solid issue. So. All right, let's move on. You have Checkmate number 4 from writer Brian Michael Bendis. Art is by Alex Maleev. Colors are by Dave Stewart. Letters are by Josh Reed. Why does this exist? I don't know. I got finished reading this, and I was curious. Like, we're always so harsh on Checkmate because it's boring, it's slow, it has continuity problems, it has pacing problems. And so I'm like, are we alone in this? Are there people out there that are really digging on Checkmate? And so I went to Comic Book Roundup, and if you're not familiar with that site, it's basically an aggregate site where they pull in all the written reviews about comics, and it's kind of like a Rotten Tomatoes for comics, right? The reviews there, especially the ratings for readers, because just like Rotten Tomatoes, where you have the critics and then you have the audience, here you have the critics and you have the fans, the actual people that read it. The critic score on Checkmate is a little higher than the fans. Not that much higher, but a little higher. But so far, 3 issues have come out, right? So 3 have been reviewed. The first one was okay. People seem to want to give it a chance. It dropped off significantly for the second. The third one was atrocious. I got to imagine the rating for this one's going to be below. It's a score of 1 to 10. I got to think, based on if it keeps going in the same direction it's going, the reader rating for this one, aggregate rating, going to be below 5. This is not a good comic. It's just not. And the other problem with it is, for whatever reason, for it being delayed and not coming out at the right time, it doesn't match up. It doesn't make sense. There's even another comic, I think it's in Justice League this week, which we'll talk about in a little bit, where it specifically says Checkmate doesn't exist anymore, or Leviathan rather doesn't exist anymore. So this didn't come out at the right time. It was late. Nobody cares. Nobody read the Leviathan event. Nobody wanted it. It doesn't suit the Superman title, which we talked about at the time it was coming out, how horrible it was. This is Brian Michael Bendis trying to do some spy, espionage, crime noir stuff. It never should have been in a Superman book. It didn't make any sense. So, okay, let's split it off into its own thing. Okay, it still doesn't make any sense. It's kind of like what I always say about the Joker. If the Joker really existed, how Batman would defeat him in 30 seconds. Or what I was just talking about, Superman would take out Mongol in no time. This is sort of the same thing. You know, you're not going to sit there and tell me that Lois Lane's going to go to her husband. No, don't get involved. We'll take care of it. When he could get involved for like an hour with his X-ray vision or whatever, find whatever evidence he needs to find in Markovia that Leviathan now, controls. He doesn't even have to invade the airspace. He could go up into space, right, and use his telescopic vision and find whatever evidence. Go in, grab it, give it to Lois. It's over. This is not a thing. Mark Shaw is not some great DC villain mastermind that it should take any amount of time to defeat him. First of all, like, Mark Shaw is a Z-list character. Not even B, C, or D. He's Z. He's all the way at the end. Nobody cared about Mark Shaw. But I still don't like the fact that Bendis took a character that at least had potential and turned him into a bad guy. From the stories that we did get of Mark Shaw, this is all wildly out of character. It doesn't make any sense. But, Bendis, he doesn't care. Continuity, what's that? So I can't even try to use your phrase, Rocky, I can't even try to put lipstick on the pig anymore. I can't even try to be positive or try to be nice. This is just bad technical comic book making. This is not good. It's not even a technical, forget about, okay, well, I don't particularly care for the story. It's crime noir, it's espionage. I don't like it. It doesn't fit into Superman or DC or whatever. Leave all that aside. Just talking about technically making a good comic, having it paced well and plotted well and scripted well. This doesn't even check off those boxes. I guess you could say, if you are a fan of Alex Maleev's art style, that this visual storytelling is pretty good. I am not a fan of Alex Maleev's style whatsoever, but I will say that the visual storytelling in terms of the transitions from panel to panel and how it's visually paced, he does tend to move the camera angles around and try to keep it interesting. He's handicapped in that this is really a talking heads story throughout. Bendis, as we talked about when we covered issue 3, he likes to skip over the parts where action actually happens and just tell us about it. That goes back to what we talked about when we covered issue 3 with him jumping around the timeline and all kinds of flashbacks. So instead of us actually seeing any of the action, we're just always told about it, which makes it even more boring and more of a talking heads comic. And again, I'm not the only one that thinks this. I won't name any names, but I've talked to other professional comic creators, people that are working right now, names you would know if I said them, but I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus because it's told to me in confidence, that are on the exact same page as me about this. Why would I want to read a comic that talks about the things that have happened that are exciting rather than just showing me and being a story of the exciting things that have happened? It makes no sense. It's just a terrible, terrible comic. I cannot believe the DC's published this. I really haven't. It's that bad.
Yeah. I don't disagree with anything you said. I will just say that trying to put, and dare I say it again, lipstick on the pig of this issue, we at least learned 2 things. We learned that the elusive snowman's ticket that Sam Lane referred his daughter Lois Lane to before he died, he actually, it's been revealed to be the birth certificate of Leonardo Lane. Lois Lane's brother, Leonardo Lane, his birth certificate
Another stupid Bendis plot point.
That's right. Now, what's interesting is that on her brother's birth certificate, it does not indicate his mother's name. It indicates his father's name, Samuel Lane, but it has crossed out the city of birth and his mother's full name and maiden name and mother's age, and the date is crossed out. And so, why is that significant? What is the secret? What is so secretive about? Is there a secret of Lois Lane's mother that we don't know about? Is she, what's the big secret there? I'm not sure. The other big secret was revealed at the beginning is when Manhunter and Green Arrow confronted Merlin and the Guardian on the Justice League satellite. Mark Shaw is trying to take out the Heroes Network, consisting of the Justice League satellite, the Hall of Justice, and the Bat Cave. The various heroes headquarters located around the globe are all part of a heroes network that are coordinated through various ways to deal with the threats that come to the Earth. He wants to infiltrate them. Of course, Lois Lane figured that out last issue, and they end up in the altercation. Green Arrow, I think Manhunter, manages to make Guardian bleed, and in an analysis of the Guardian's blood, it's revealed to potentially contain, according to Bones, some type of potential alien DNA. Director Bones has said that the working theory is that somehow the reason why all these people are working for Leviathan are because they're being manipulated from him, and they're being mind controlled, and they don't realize they're being mind controlled. That's why Leviathan, from the beginning, through all this drawn out multiple series we've been getting, Leviathan has always generally tried to resist killing people, generally speaking, because he always wants to talk to them, and he brags about being able to talk to people on his side. Well, it looks as if it is indeed a form of mind control. Lois Lane spoke to her husband Superman in this issue. She was afraid that she was infected by this. They're fearful of this. There are some continuity glitches here. Lois Lane and Superman are talking about trying to find some evidence of war crimes against Leviathan, and they mentioned Bendis is clearly screwed up. Bendis wrote Action Comics. Leviathan worked with the Legion of Doom in attacking Metropolis. For some reason, they think that Leviathan is one of the heroes of Metropolis and stopped Luthor. That's not what happened. He actually attacked Metropolis. He's a wanted man by every intelligence agency that he destroyed on the planet. It makes no sense that they don't have any evidence of war crimes against Mark Shaw. This is very forced storytelling to try to prop up Leviathan. It just doesn't make any sense. At the end, we do know that Talia is working with Mark Shaw, and at the end, the church that Director Bones and Manhunter and Green Arrow and the Question were at, along with Robin, and Steve Trevor, it ends up being sucked up and transported by Mark Shaw at the end. So we do get some action here, but where this is going, this is the exact opposite of PKJ's Action Comics. I don't really care where this is going. I want this to end.
Yeah, and to your point about the birth certificate, here we go again with Bendis. Like, why do you even put? You clearly don't like Lois Lane, based on the, and this is the thing. Like, he's talked about Lois Lane being the most heroic person in the DC universe, the best hero, the best person, his favorite character. Then why does he treat her like crap? He has her betray Superman left and right, giving away Superman's identity in his Action Comics run, and now she can't even figure out that there was something hidden in this stuffed snowman. Really? As intelligent as you say Lois Lane is, she can't figure out that this birth certificate was in there? Because when Superman tells her, oh yeah, there's something hidden inside, she just pops off the head like no big deal. You didn't try that before? You're a genius, Lois Lane. Like, Bendis.
She doesn't have X-ray vision.
She didn't examine it? Yeah, it's so bad. It's so bad. I just don't understand. I just don't. Never been a Bendis fan, and I mean, again, I've met the guy. It's nothing against him personally. His love of comics is infectious. I want to like his stuff, but it's just bad. Anyway, let's move on. Deathstroke Incorporated #1. Joshua Williamson is the writer. Howard Porter is the artist. Hi-Fi does the colors. Steve Wan's on letters. I don't have much to say about this. Talk about feeling really forced. I thought it was super cliche. So Hive, we know, has been kind kind of like an AIM or a Hydra criminal organization in the DC universe. Those are over in Marvel, but if you're a Marvel or MCU fan, you'll know about those corporations. Hive is sort of the equivalent in the DC universe. They've gone up against the Titans a lot of times. And for some reason, Joshua Williamson leans into that idea of Hive and decides that they're going to make killer bees. Basically, people become their insides of their body are transformed into these horrible bees through this poison honey that this mother figure is or queen figure has infected this town with. Like, really? Could you hit the nail more on the head here? Like, it's so cliche, it's so tropey, and even that would be okay if it wasn't for the sloppy art too. Like Howard Porter, God love him. His style is so different now than it was when he was back on that classic Grant Morrison Justice League run, and it's because he had an injury and he taught himself how to draw all over again, and that's fine. I'm not picking on him because of that. That's very admirable, and I love the fact that he's come back and he still has a career. And most of the time, his art is fantastic. He doesn't have an inker here, is the problem. And when he inks himself, the art is just sloppy. The proportions on the figures aren't correct. He needs an inker for his art to look a little more polished and to come across a little better. The storytelling is still okay, but it just looks so messy when he doesn't have an inker. So I didn't care for the art. I didn't care for the kind of the beats of the story. There is sort of a saving grace is it is interesting hearing Deathstroke talk about why he's doing what he's doing. It's Black Canary getting a chance to shine solo without Green Arrow around. I like that. So there are a few little redeeming qualities here or there, which might make this a good series. But I felt like this first issue was below average. I just didn't care for it that much.
Yeah.
But I will one more thing. I will say what was absolutely fantastic, without question, is the Alex Hughes Black Canary cover.
Oh wow!
Absolutely. Despite this being not a very good comic, a below average comic, in my opinion, I did order the Adam Hughes cover just because it's that good. So
yeah, I'm
anyway.
hoping to pick that up myself. I also ordered that, but I may have ordered it too late from what my retailer tells me, much to my chagrin. But yeah, I thought this was Joshua Williamson. He just gave an interview today to The Beat. And he talked about Justice League and his upcoming series, Justice League Incarnate, which is of course, the second part of his trilogy of leading into the crisis in 2022. And he talked about this new series here, Deathstroke Incorporated, and it's at some point it's going to link with Robin as well. He's writing on Robin, and he'll be writing Batman as well, and of course he'll be writing Justice League Incarnate. And so he's working toward having some sort of linkages between all of them. And I don't, I'm a little bit, it worries me a little bit, to be quite frank, but I agree with you. I thought the art here was a little sloppy, but that it was serviceable enough that I still, I got into it and I enjoyed it. Howard Porter, I remember him fondly, again, from the Grant Morrison days, but he's a decent enough artist. But the story here was really simplistic. I got to say that the whole point here, this is Deathstroke and Black Canary taking on the forces of actually they work for Trust. And the director of Trust is this Juliet Ballantyne. And I just find it funny that, we had Leviathan, take out the DEO, take out Checkmate and Task Force S and Task Force X and Star Labs and Shade and Argus and Project Cadmus and all these intelligence agencies were taken out, and now we're getting them all back. We got the DEO, we got Argus back, we got Shade, we got all these, we got Star Labs back, we got Checkmate back, and now to top it off, now we have Trust on top of it. So we've got more intelligence agencies in the DC universe than we did before Leviathan took them all out. So I just find this kind of funny. And one question I have for Joshua Williamson is, why on earth would you create a new intelligence agency? What, you could have revived a handful of intelligence agencies that already exist in the DC universe, but you had to create a brand new one right from scratch. So I find it, so I think a little bit of that must have been Williamson's ego, which I suppose he's earned it because he certainly paid his dues with DC, and he's certainly writing enough titles now that he could probably write whatever he wants. But I thought this was boring. Straight up, I thought this was boring. I don't even know what town this is. Is this a town in Europe? I look for a place. Is this in Europe? Is this a small American town? Is this someplace in Europe? It seems cliche. All these people are just sort of like being trained to be clones, to infiltrate, to work for the Hive and then infiltrate all these other towns. And so I'm not even sure what this is all about. I actually thought it was cliche. You said one of the things that you like, Jace, was the Deathstroke talking about him wanting to maybe sort of get on the side of Angels a little bit because he's always been a bad guy, but he's got all the money he wants. He wants to maybe seek some kind of redemption. And we know that Black Canary's just there because Oracle says go keep an eye on Trust. Because guess what? Surprise, surprise. Maybe we shouldn't trust. And so, but that's not really interesting. So far, it seems really tropey and really cliche. But this is the type of comic, I got to admit, that if I was, 12, 13, 14 years old, I might be right into it. But I've seen this story 1,000 times start off this way. And it's just really I'm just not intrigued by it. I'm not intrigued by this at all. Like, I can't believe that you would send Deathstroke to take out this level of minor threat with the Black. I don't know. This just seemed really disappointing to me, and I hope it picks up. I hope it picks up next issue.
Yep, I agree. Not a very good comic. Below average, but room for improvement. All right, up next we have Detective Comics number 1043. Mariko Tamaki is the writer. Dan Moore is the artist. Jordy Billard on colors. Aditya Bidikar handles the letters. There is a backup here. Task Force Z. The Task Force Z story written by Matthew Rosenberg. Derek Robertson is the artist. Diego Rodriguez on colors. Rob Lee on letters. I guess this ties into Fear State. I mean, it says Fear State Nakano's Nightmare Part 1. But this felt like the least Fear State tie-in of any of the Fear State stuff we've read so far. Not to say it wasn't good, but what did you think of this issue, Rocky?
Well, I didn't mind it. This was a very action-packed issue. I'll give you that much. I love there's an alternate cover that says it's like a wanted poster. It's got the Huntress on it. It's actually, it looks gorgeous. I think it's those video game covers. Anyways, it looks really nice. Has the Huntress on it, and I like to get the whole set of them. They look really nice. But in any event, the story itself is basically the forces are trying to take out Mayor Nagano, and Simon Saint. Right now, we're moving toward Future State, and the future that we know of Future State is, I'm not sure if I have a feeling it's not actually going to take place, but Simon Saint is Gotham's in chaos right now. Simon Saint needs to get control of Peacekeeper 1. He sent Peacekeeper X against Peacekeeper 1. And meanwhile, while this is happening, unbeknownst to Simon Saint, somebody is attacking to try to kill the mayor. And Batman has to protect the mayor. And Mayor Nagano tries to escape, and Mayor Nagano himself, he ends up being attacked in his own office, and he uses a trapdoor to escape behind his desk. Again, kind of tropey, and he ends up. I find it hilarious after having this huge argument with Simon Saint. Because Mayor Nagano allowed a private security organization like the Magistrate Program, headed by Simon Saint, to sort of take over the police security in Gotham. He's expressing his concerns, and Simon Saint is trying to, put him in his place. And so they agree to disagree. And then Simon Saint leaves. Mayor Nagano's he's attacked, and then he escapes under the trapdoor behind his desk. Batman follows him, and he ends up literally in the sewage once again in the sewage area of Gotham City. The sewage pipes, the I don't know, like all the drainage and the sewage area of Gotham City. I almost think that more people live under Gotham than they live on the main streets of Gotham. But it's just crazy. But the art here is fantastic. Dan Mora on the art is really good. You really get a sense that the mayor's life is very much in danger. You really get a sense of the gravitas of the situation. Batman is doing the best he can to try to find the mayor, to try to rescue him, do his best to help him. And at the end, this is linked in with the Vial, that villain who died. What's it? Vial Spawn or
Hugh,
what?
yeah, Hugh Vile.
Yeah, Hugh Vile and Mariko Tamaki. This Hugh Vile villain that she sort of introduced us to. He of course he's died, but he out of his blood infected, I think, the sewage and the waters of Gotham City. And underneath Gotham, it's Mayor Nagano that comes across these parasites at the end, and the final panel, it suggests that Mayor Nagano might end up being infected by this vile parasite. This vile spawn is what is teased to come up next. And this was an adrenaline-packed issue. It was. I liked it. It moved quickly. We got some. Again, it not a lot of real plot development, but it was at least action-packed and fun. Fantastic art by Dan Mora. If somebody hasn't been enjoying this run on Future State and hasn't been enjoying the Magistrate or Simon Saint, you're not going to be enjoying this issue. But I've really been enjoying it. I like it. I like what Mariko Tamaki has done here. I thought her Hugh Vile as a villain. I thought it was interesting. I thought it had it was slower in parts, but this issue really picked up. I like to see Mayor Nagano. I actually like him having a little bit more involvement in the story. I'm surprised. It's nice to see finally his life is in danger more. So I like this. I thought this was pretty good. What do you think?
Yeah, I liked it too. The problem I have with it isn't anything specific to do with this issue. This is a very technically well done comic, beautiful art from Dan Mora, great pacing from Mariko Tamaki. Here's the only issue that I have with it, and again, I have to point to Future State causing issues with problems. I mean, there's even an editor's note here. The story takes place alongside Batman 113 on sale now. You add in the Future State, and you start looking at Mayor Nakano's characterization in that future story, right? Like the mayor, and again, I know it's a possible future, but it still makes it a bit confusing because if anybody's read that and remembers the characterization of Nakano or some of the previous characterizations of Nakano in other Batman titles, and then you read this, you're like, well, how is this even the same guy? He's acting wildly different. This Nakano is not instantly unlikable. This Nakano doesn't feel like he's sticking his head in the sand. This Nakano doesn't feel like he's just prejudice against vigilantes and people that wear masks for no logical reason, as he's been portrayed in the past, even by Mariko Tamaki. So if I have any complaint about it, it's just Mayor Nakano's characterization hasn't been consistent. And again, it goes to all these different stories that are being told, sometimes by different writers in different timelines, jumping around, telling a story of a possible future, then going back, then trying to fill in the spaces and that sort of thing. And so you can understand from that perspective why some of these characterizations might not be as consistent as they should be for a character that's as new as Nakano is. I've disliked Nakano almost every time he's appeared on the page. He hasn't been likable. He hasn't felt like a leader. He hasn't felt even like an intelligent person. He's felt like somebody making a knee-jerk reaction because his partner got killed and blaming the wrong thing. And like just acting out of emotion rather than actually thinking about things and making critical choices based on logic and reason. And I have no respect for people like that, whether it's in real life or in a comic. This for the first time ever feels like we're getting a Nakano who's actually thinking for a change. He's even standing up to Simon Saint going, no, you are not the ones that are in charge of Gotham City. it's the responsibility of myself, the other politicians. We're the ones that have to deal with it. So maybe a little more backbone from Nakano, maybe a little more critical thinking, and you wouldn't get in that position of the magistrate having all this power. So maybe it's a little bit too little too late, but at least he's realizing, at least he's trying to stand up for Gotham City. So I do appreciate that. So overall, yeah, I thought it was a pretty good issue. Again, I wonder about kind of the pacing of Future State, because you said it yourself, not that much happened in this issue. So why does Future State need to be as big as it is? And I kind of feel the same way about the Harley Quinn issue we'll talk about in a little bit. So I don't know. Maybe Future State could have been a little shorter. I don't know. The backup feature with Deb Donovan and Red Hood, written by Matthew Rosenberg, I thought it was just okay. I didn't think this particular part of the story was as entertaining as the first two parts that we got from Matthew Rosenberg. But we do know we're getting Task Force Z, and we know there's going to be a series, and I guess it'll all be explained how these dead criminals are back and are under the leadership of Jason Todd, and who exactly they're going after and what exactly their purpose is going to be. I guess we'll find out. So I think this backup did its job. We got to have some great Derek Robertson art. Deb Donovan really shined in the first two parts, but this third part really just felt like kind of a by the numbers. We didn't learn that much, other than, Jason Todd gets captured by apparently who was ever pulling the strings behind Task Force Z. It's not Amanda Waller, apparently. Thank God. So, but overall, I think the Task Force Z backup, obviously it served its purpose. It's leading into the Task Force Z series. And, I throw it in the back of Detective Comics because that's Batman, and Batman sells. So
yep.
Hopefully they'll get a good lead into the Task Force Z book. Anything to say about the backup, Rocky?
Yeah. We know that Jason Todd is going to be leading basically a bunch of dead former Gothamites, Sundowner, Mr. Bloom, Bane, Man-Bat, the Arkham Knight, all led by Jason Todd. They are Task Force Z. And this is just the second part of a backup titled "What the F is Task Force Z?" And this is just basically Deb Donovan. She breaks the story, and that's what this is. And what's good about this is that we get this awesome new team, and we also get it's a very good way, I think, of giving Deb Donovan some agency, as you would say, and to really give her some gravitas as a reporter, particularly the way that she ends up conversing with Batman here. Derek Robertson's art's fantastic. There's a great scene where Batman ends up picking up Deb Donovan, and I'm thinking to myself, she weighs a lot. That Batman's pretty strong there. I mean, it reminds me of that classic scene of Batman, swinging with, a classic Batman pose, and Deb Donovan, swearing as he picks her up, and I don't know. I really enjoy this. I hope it is. Derek Robertson going to be the artist for Task Force Z, or is it just for this backup? Do you know?
I don't know. I don't.
Because I would love it if he was. Wow, I love the art.
I'm not. Yeah, not sure.
But yeah, overall, I actually like the backup here a little bit more than the main story, to be honest.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Up next, we have more Batman. It's Robin #6 from writer Joshua Williamson. Gleb Melnikov is the artist. Luis Guerrero on colors. Troy Petrie on letters. The tournament has finally started. It's Ready, Fight. And the title of the issue is Fight, 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 as the apparently onlookers are cheering that. And we get various fights. Round 1, Robin versus Blue Shrike. And then there's a few others. Round 2, Robin versus Tengu. We got XXL against Raptor. We got Ravager against a pro wrestler, it says. Drenched against Drakon. Johnny Fist and Hawk. So there's a few different fights. It definitely has more of the Mortal Kombat feel that we sort of expected the story to have in the beginning. And I did sort of enjoy that. And we also finally see some movement in the plot going forward about what's going on with the book that Mother Soul has that she sort of guards with her life. So next month, supposedly, we're supposed to find out who Mother Soul really is. Um, that may make or break this series in my mind, um, because what I had hoped for in the series, which was some good Connor Hawk screen time, has not materialized at all. And being that I'm not a fan of Damian Wayne, I'm just about over this series at this point. So find out who Mother Soul is, find out about what's going on with the book, um, and if that's enough to keep my attention or not. Um, as far as the art goes, this is probably the best art I've seen from Gleb Melnikov in the entire series. He seems like he's tightening up and cleaning up his line work a little bit, and I did enjoy that because he does have a tendency to get a little scritchy at times and look a little sloppy. But I thought this one was done very, very well. So in a way, it's sort of the best issue, and maybe it's because of the art, the best issue so far, because I feel like it was the best paced issue of the series so far as well. But maybe that's just because it's filled with some great fight scenes. And again, credit to Gleb Melnikov on giving us some fantastic fight scenes, because a lot of them we only get one panel when it's someone besides Damian fighting, and he does a good job of in a single small panel, oftentimes giving us an idea of just what went down in the fight. So yeah, definite A+ on the art for this issue, and maybe a solid B for the story, because again, paced very well and felt like it moved the story along quite a bit, especially, and that's really impressive considering how much of the real estate in the issue is dedicated to the actual fights. We also got a little bit of background on Flatline, which I enjoyed, and some character moments between some of the fighters: Flatline, Ravager, Connor Hawk, Damien himself. So, yeah, overall, I think the best of the series so far. Um, if I have any complaint, yeah, just give me a little more Connor Hawk, and I hope Mother Soul doesn't turn out to be somebody completely ridiculous. I hope there's not some retcon. She's Damien's grandmother or something stupid like that. So,
Yeah.
anyway, what did you think, Rocky?
Well, I'm going to be a little bit more hard on this comic than you are. I will say that for one issue, when you consider that this is only one issue, boy, a lot happens in it. But this is issue 6. This is one of the reasons why I'm even more complaining about issue 5. Why we wasted that entire issue 5, with Damian talking to the Batman family. This is supposed to be a tournament. I personally am absolutely disappointed. I can't express my disappointment enough with the fight scenes here. Gleb Melnikov is a great artist. I just wish he would have had more real estate upon which to show off his art for the fight scenes. Now, having said that, perhaps the saving grace is I really like the character moments between Flatline and Damian. I like that clearly they're building toward a relationship there. Flatline gives him a manga book, which is like that has like sort of a part of the manga story in the comic book that Damien is reading has some romance in it. And so they're hinting at maybe a future relationship between Flatline and Damien, and even Ravager teased them about them maybe being in a relationship. We learned something about Flatline's origin, which was good. But I personally thought that all these fight scenes, why are we only getting one panel of these fight scenes? This to me is like, why? I can't believe this. I like a lot of this stuff. I'd like to see more of this. XXL stomped out Raptor, Ravager, killing the pro wrestler with his own fanny pack. A lot of this sounds actually hilarious. I'd like to have seen these things play out more. Flatline ripping out the heart of some other opponent. And I would have liked, I don't even know some of this stuff. And maybe I'm being critical here, but there's a two pages on Damien's fight scene where he fights Tengu, snaps his neck, and then he fights this other guy. And I'm not even sure what some of the panels, what actually happened, to be as a criticism to maybe some of the art of Gleb Melnikov. this one opponent, this hawk character, not hawk, but this bird-like beak character ends up getting the sword through the face. I'm not even sure what Damien did. It it I was disappointed. I personally was disappointed with what I saw as the fight scenes. I thought they were rushed. This is what I'm looking forward to. This whole thing is talk of a tournament, and we're getting none of it. Now I'm hoping that next issue, we're next issue. It makes it clear that we're going to be getting, it hints at what there's going to be more specific fight scenes next issue with what I'm assuming are going to be the final 8 and hopefully, I really hope that we're going to be getting far better, more time spent on the choreographing of those fight scenes. And because one of the things that Flatline and Robin talk about in this issue is they disagreed about tactics, and Flatline really impressed Robin with her knowledge of being able to read an opponent, and you could see some mutual respect being built there. And I really hope that's built upon, but I found myself wanting more actions, but overall, I'm definitely in this for the next issue, and I hope Williamson nails the landing here. And I know Gleb Melnikov, I want him to be able to show off his art more with fight scenes.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a limit, right? This is not a limited series, right?
Well, no, fair enough, but I'm not sure how long this arc is. Is this like a 7 issue arc or 8 issue arc?
Yeah, I would think at least 8 issues, but yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm expecting kind of a big climax and cliffhanger next issue when we find out what the book is all about and who Mother Soul is, and then maybe the resolution in issue 8. So.
I guess what I'm thinking is that if the whole point of this 7 or 8 issue arc is to find out who Mother Soul is, then I'm disappointed because it started off with this being about a tournament. I don't want this to be. I don't want this plot to be sort of kidnapped by who Mother. I don't care who Mother Soul is. I'm kind of looking.
Yeah, but the whole point of why he went to the tournament was to find out who was messing with his mom.
Well, I know, I realize that, but also,
I 100% agree with you. The whole reason that I even read it is because I was told tournament. I was told Connor Hawk. Yeah, we should have known better than to think we'd actually get some fun fight tournament. Because we haven't gotten it so far.
It's just the nerd, the geek in me, the Jean-Claude Van Damme, I mean, I want to see this fight.
Yep. Yeah, we were hoping for a fight in issue, and that's not what we're getting at all. So, anyway, up next, Batman Reptilian #4 from writer Garth Ennis. Liam Sharpe handles the art, the color. Rob Steen on letters. We find out what's going on, what's been going on this entire issue. We finally come face to face with the big bad. It's sort of what we suspected, something to do with Killer Croc, something to do with, reptiles and evolution and whatnot. And I like it because what it ends up doing, not because it was so obvious, but just because in a way it's so simple who the big villain is, and it's not some, scheming, genius level intellect or whatever. What it does is it pushes the focus back on this version of Batman, this cynical version of Batman who really doesn't care what happens to these criminals, really does feel that they deserve to be punished, and how sort of laissez-faire he is about them being attacked by this giant monster, basically. That explains why they were being attacked, how they were marked and whatnot. So it swings the attention back onto Batman, and takes it off of, now that the mystery has been resolved or been solved of who exactly the big bad is. It definitely, the mystery is over, and the focus swings back to just focusing on Batman, and you can't help but wonder, okay, well, how's he gonna defeat this monstrous entity once and for all? So great title for the issue as well, The Birds and the Bees, when you start talking about reproduction and genders and all that sort of thing. And so, yeah. And as far as the art goes, I mean, we've praised Liam Sharpe this entire time for his moody, just emotionally impressionistic art on this title, and this issue's no exception. It's, I don't want to say gruesome, but it's foreboding, it's menacing, it's creepy at times. So fantastic job from him as well. What did you think of issue 4 here, Rocky?
I just loved how I loved how Batman he comes across as brilliant in this issue, but he comes across as brilliant in a way that lacks any kind of empathy whatsoever for Croc. He's
Yep.
explaining to Croc why he thinks that Croc might, basically he's telling Croc, look, I think that you're a byproduct of an experiment that went wrong over the Tampa swamp in the 1970s, and the military tried to cover it all up, and that basically you're kind of a freak of nature, and that somehow, I'm not sure, Croc, maybe you're female. Are you lactating? Are you giving birth? I think you gave birth, Croc, and I think you when you had a meeting with all the other villains, I think that you sprayed them with one of your pheromones, and your offspring that you gave birth to is looking for its mother. It's looking for you, but since you sprayed all your other villains, it went to all your other villains like the Joker and Riddler and Penguin, and it realized it's looking for its mother, but every time it can't find its mother, it gets angry and it basically rips apart and kills whichever isn't its mother. And Batman is so matter of fact about it, telling Croc this story. Meanwhile, Croc is devastated hearing this. Croc had no idea that he was pregnant. He has no idea why this amniotic sac, is hanging from his private area, which is hinted at through the art, but you can read between the lines. And then at the end, where this creature approaches Croc, Batman is completely confident. He's got nothing to worry about because Batman wasn't shot with a pheromone, so he's not going to be attacked. Batman sits back and watches Croc get sort of, I'm not sure if something sexual happened or something untoward happened to Croc from his offspring, but I got to tell you, man, Batman was just sort of like matter of fact about it. And the issue ends with this creature just sort of staring Batman down. And so I'm not sure what's going to happen, but the dialogue here and just the visceral lack of empathy on Batman's part is just it's so consistent here. Well, with the way that Batman's portrayed. I love this Batman. He has an indifferent attitude toward the villains and the way it plays out, and he's so efficient and he's so brilliant, and it just, man, I really love this. I'm definitely going to be picking this up in hardcover form when it comes out.
Yeah, fantastic story for the exact opposite of a kindler, gentler Batman.
Yeah.
A meaner, harder Batman.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
maybe that's exactly what Gotham City needs. So, all right, on to Justice League number 68. This is written by Brian Michael Bendis. We have art from Scott Godlewski. Colors are by Gabe Eltab. Letters by Josh Reed. And then we have the Justice League Dark Backup, written by Ram V. Sumit Kumar is the artist. Nick Filardi on colors. Rob Lee on letters. So we saw last issue, at the end of the issue, the United Planets police force, basically the United Order of the United Planets, who says they outrank any authority on Earth, and they were asking Superman to turn over the Phantom Zone projector, and it looked like they were about to come to blows. You know what? I'll give Bendis credit for not falling into that old comic book trope with heroes fighting heroes. They end up sort of talking each other down and decide not to fight against each other, which is kind of cool. So then the Justice League says, okay, well, as long as we're not going to fight, can you help us clean up the wreckage of the Hall of Justice? And that's where the United Order says, you know what? We got cleanup of our own to do.
Yeah.
The great Hall of Unity, Sinmar took out that. So they beg off and leave. And then while the rest of the league are debating on should they rebuild the Hall of Justice, is it just a target for other villains to come and attack? No, it's a symbol, it's inspiration. Well, how should they rebuild it? While they're all debating, Superman and Flash take it upon themselves to rebuild it all around the rest of the league as they're debating at super speed. So that was kind of a fun moment. And the Hall of Justice now has its own AI, which is Calyx. And Calyx tells them that at least the executive bathrooms and kitchen areas have been remodeled. So from there, we jump over to because it's a Bendis book. Damon Rose, Leonardo Lane, if you want to think of him that way. Lois Lane's brother. We just talked about it in Checkmate, seen his birth certificate and whatnot. We saw him show up, a couple of issues ago. Does anybody care about this guy? Not really. This is, again, where things don't quite line up continuity-wise. And somehow he takes out all of these supposed Deathstrokes. We learn who's behind all these Deathstrokes. Checkmate then shows up. This didn't feel like a Justice League comic to me, with all these different characters showing up who don't have anything to do with Justice League. So I guess Bendis just doesn't have enough real estate in the Checkmate comic to tell the Checkmate story. So let's branch out into Justice League. Again, my argument's going to be that the Justice League title should be a classic superhero title at the heart and center of the DC universe. Shouldn't have anything to do with spies or espionage or any of that nonsense, because when you talk about the power level of the Justice Leaguers, and we just saw it fighting against Sinmar, Utopica, any kind of spy organization, Leviathan, Checkmate, blah, 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 whatever, they'd be wiped out instantaneously by Black Adam and Superman and Hippolyta and whatever. So, again, it's one of those issues where I don't really see the point. Not much happened. We were teased a big epic fight. I almost wish Bendis had fallen into the trope. At least that would have been something exciting, because we don't get much action in the issue. And I think this might, and I didn't count, but I think this might have the most words of any Justice League issue that Bendis has written so far, because every panel is just littered with word balloons. Like, just especially when you get to the back part of the book or back part of the issue where Damon Rose, Leonardo Lane, is talking to Oliver Queen and the female manhunter. I can't remember, Kate
Spencer. Yeah.
Kate Spencer. Yep. When you get back to that page, oh my God! Like, you can't even see the art. Yeah, that page right there. You can't even see the art for all those word balloons. That is ridiculous. The word balloons literally take up 50% of the area on the page.
Yeah,
I guess he does. I guess maybe Bendis doesn't like Scott Godlewski's art either. I'm going to cover it all up with word balloons. So yeah, not the worst issue of Justice League that Bendis has written, because not much happens other than his diarrhea of the mouth. But felt like this was What do you think of the main story, Rock?
Yeah, I don't know. Like the whole Sinmar Utopica thing, he was sent to the Phantom Zone last issue. We get into a jurisdictional pissing match between Hawk Slayer of the United Order wanting Superman to give him the Phantom Zone projector, but they resolved that by way of an apology. So all that fake gravitas at the end of the last issue was all nonsense, just to create some false suspense to bring us to this issue, where really nothing happens. The United Order just goes home. They clean up the Justice League. That was a waste of 2 previous issues. And then all of a sudden, it feels like we're depowering the Justice League so we can make a non-powered Damon Rose, Lois Lane's brother, look good. And he just reveals that somebody tried to recruit him to kill the Justice League. So I'm not sure why we're supposed to care. He's a really good spy. Who's dumb enough to recruit a human being to try to kill the Justice League? I mean, are we supposed to believe this guy's Batman? DEO, the director Bones, when he talks about the Damon Rose. By the way, it's not Damon Rose, it's the Damon Rose. So I don't know what that's supposed to mean, but he's the Damon Rose.
Oh, how threatening.
Yes. Yeah, apparently he is really good. He's got a really good skill sets. He's Nightwing good, apparently. So that's good. I mean, Lois Lane's brother should be fairly competent. That's good to know. Just one little continuity glitch here. I will note that Bendis made the same mistake Scott Snyder did. He had Hawkslayer refer to Kendra Saunders as my Thanagarian sister. Kendra Saunders is not Thanagarian. This is a common mistake made by many a writer. Kendra Saunders is not Thanagarian, but they keep getting it wrong. This is, it's not Shara Hall. Shara Hall is Thanagarian, not Kendra Saunders. But in any event, again, I suppose that's minor in the general scheme of things. Apparently, Kendra Saunders herself thinks that she's Thanagarian in this issue. So maybe with the new Omniverse, things are different. But again, little glitches like that are sort of par for the course for Bendis, but of course he's not the only one who's made them, so I'll maybe cut him some slack on that. But it's interesting. If I'm trying to give this story some weight, it's nice to know that maybe there's something to be said here with Checkmate being involved with the Justice League now. With Damon Rose, with if somebody is trying to wipe out the Justice League and they're trying to do it surreptitiously or from within, or there's a scheme here that we don't know what it is. There might be a story here, but I guess the problem that we've all had with Bendis is that Bendis hasn't earned any of our trust yet. He hasn't earned my trust as a writer. I don't trust him to tell this story so that it makes sense because he hasn't. I haven't trusted him so far. I feel lost with what he's tried to do with Leviathan and Checkmate to begin with. I'm still trying to figure out what he's trying to do with the Snowman's Ticket over in the Checkmate series. And now the most confusing series of Checkmate is now part of his Justice League, and we've wasted 2 issues with one long battle sequence with Sinmar Utopica, a villain that nobody understood his motivation to begin with, and we wasted 2.5 issues on Sinmar Utopica, and now he's just sent to this Phantom Zone, a plot device that Bendis has used no less than 4 times in multiple plot threads. This is kind of a, this continues to be a miss for me. And I hope at some point we get some, I'm still looking for a reason why I'm supposed to care about Justice League, and I'm just not picking it up. But Justice League Dark, the next story, it's nice to see that we're going to be getting some movement on that. And I don't know if you want me to start talking about that or you want to lead the way.
Go ahead.
Well, the Justice League backup, written by Ram V, art by Sumit Kumar. Nick Filardi does the colors, Rob Lay on the letters. As we've said before, this is usually the reason to pick up the Justice League comic because of the Justice League backup. This really builds up to a head. One of the secrets that we know that was previously revealed is that in order to defeat the Upside Down Man in the pages of Justice League Dark, when Justice League Dark had their own comic, they defeated the Upside Down Man, but at a price. And Zatanna, the price that Zatanna paid is that every time she'd use her power, the Upside Down Man would become closer to taking control of her. While the Ragman in the previous backup stories of Justice League discovered Zatanna's secret, and in this issue where they're battling Merlin in Atlantis and John Constantine and Bibbo and Aquaman, they're fighting the undead because Merlin has resurrected the undead of Atlantis. They managed to defeat them. They're just on the cusp of potential victory against Merlin, but Merlin creates a duplicate of himself, and meanwhile the real Merlin has used one of his power stones to force Zatanna to use up all of her magic, thereby releasing the Upside Down Man, and that's how it ends. And this was epic, and it's only 8 pages. So I mean, honestly, I was more excited about this backup because than I was in the main story. This has gravitas. This has excitement for me. This is what I was sort of looking forward to, and now that the Upside Down Man was released, I mean, it took Wonder Woman, the combined power of Wonder Woman and Zatanna, to defeat the Upside Down Man to begin with, and now that the Upside Down Man is completely in control of Zatanna, I don't know how this leads in the future state. I don't know how this, I don't know how to reconcile where Justice League Dark now is with Zatanna being possessed by the Upside Down Man, knowing how Justice League Dark ends up in future state. I'm not sure how we're going to reconcile those two, how we're going to go there. Maybe this is the different ending that the demon Etrigan sort of spoke of, or rather Dr. Fate said to the demon Etrigan in future state, said to the demon that, look, the past and the present and time works differently for the demon. And so maybe somehow that the present is going to change and the future's not written in stone because of the way that the demon Etrigan perceives time. And so I'm really curious to see how this is all going to work out. And what'd you think? Were you more intrigued with this backup as well?
Yeah, definitely better than the main story. it has at times felt like it has kind of dragged. But again, it's tough. You only have 8 pages. How can you pace it correctly when you only have 8 pages, but you're still trying to tell a story? So hats off to Ram V when he gets it right, and he definitely got it right in this particular issue. What I love about it is, like, again, not to sound like a broken record, but he's handcuffed to some extent by the events that were shown in Future State, and he has to address that with Merlin taking over the world, and Etrigan basically being sort of like the totality, right, where he has knowledge of all his existence throughout all his time, and that's how they're going to pass the message back through time. Ramvi, I don't know how much of that was his idea, but he is beholden to it to some extent. But even though he's beholden to that and heading toward that potential future, and maybe we'll find out how he's able to veer off from that. But even though that's a big part of the story, he's still able to bring in past elements like the Upside Down Man, who's a fantastic villain that James Tynion created. And so the fact that he's able to very seamlessly marry those two ideas together, that take that as a lesson, some of you other writers out there who are struggling with what's going on and just so beholden to Future State and everything being tied into what happened in Future State. So kudos to Ram V. I don't know that I am as big a fan of Kumar's art as I was of Zermanico when Zermanico was doing the art. But the art is still very, very good. It doesn't quite have the epic scope that Zermanico's art had, and maybe it's just a matter of Zermanico's done some big stuff. He's done some DC Dark Knight's Death Metal stuff. He did the Infinite Frontier stuff. So maybe it's just a difference in style. So again, all I'll say in closing is that this should have its own title. We said it from the beginning when we found out it got canceled that it should not have. And yeah, can we flip it around? Can we get 8 pages of Bendis every month and have this be the main story? I would be all for that. So.
Yeah.
All right, up next we have Wonder Woman Black and Gold. There's 4 stories in here. 4 or 5. I didn't really care for any of them except one, so I'm not going to really go into detail and talk about them, other than the one that I liked and thought was really good. Actually, I take that back. There were 2 that were interesting. So let me read off the credits, and I'll talk about the 2 that I thought were great. Prayer, written by Andrew Constant. Art by Nicola Scott, colors by Annette Kwok, letters by Dave Sharpe. Amazing, written and drawn by Paul Azaceta, lettered by Wes Abbott. Whatever Happened to Kathy Perkins, written by Sina Grace. Art by Leonardo Romero, lettered by Pat Brousseau. Love Failed, written, drawn, and lettered by Andrew McLean. And then Wing Woman, written by Sherry L. Smith, art by Colleen Duran, lettered by Ann World Design. So far and away, the best story is the first one, Prayer by Andrew Constant, with some amazing Nicola Scott art, where basically this mythological creature, the body of a lion and the head of like some kind of an eagle or whatnot, and apparently it moved from the Middle East to some probably Pacific Northwest type forest where it hid out for years and years, and Wonder Woman warned the creature of the encroaching danger of man. It was eventually going to be discovered, and the creature, as it got older, it got kind of obstinate and wasn't quite all there, and so it ended up attacking this family of campers, and Wonder Woman had to come and lasso it and subdue it with her lasso, and then she ends up making a blood sacrifice and wrapping it in her lasso, and then saying a prayer to Artemis, and the spirit of this mythological beast is taken away and finally knows peace. So I thought that was a really, really good story. Showed the compassion of Wonder Woman and her understanding, and so that one really worked for me. And then the last one, Wing Woman, again, Sherry L. Smith, Colleen Duran. The art on this one is fantastic. Like, as you see this female pilot, she was a WASP back in World War II, and it's talking about her role and what she was doing, and she ends up getting attacked by one of the very first jets that ever existed. by a Nazi jet, and Wonder Woman is there to sort of save the day. And the reason I liked it was the art. The art, especially the clouds, was fantastic from Colleen Duran. The story itself was fine. I will give Sherry Smith credit for giving us a story that easily fit within the kind of the short amount of pages that she had. So I thought that was really great as well. And then actually, let me mention the Cena Gray story as well. Whatever happened to Kathy Perkins, because it ties in very much to that period of time where Wonder Woman was sort of that mod 60s spy type hero and didn't have her powers. And so I like that Cena Grace gave us a story that harkened back to that was pretty heartfelt. But I wasn't a big fan of the art in that one from Leo Romero. And then the other two stories, for me they kind of dragged. They were tropey. The pacing wasn't good on them. So I'm just going to leave it at that. They didn't really speak to me at all. So anyway, what were your thoughts on this issue of Wonder Woman Black and Gold?
Well, I'll speak to the stories you never mentioned. The one story by Paul Azakata called Amazing. It's just like, it was a nice feel-good story with a kid dressed up like Batman. He loves Batman, and he dresses up like Batman, and he plays as Batman, and then he ends up looking outside his window, and he sees Giganta fighting Wonder Woman. And the coloring, you see the bright yellow magic lasso and the yellow and Wonder Woman as she knocks out a great big Giganta, and of course, she ends up rescuing these two kids, and of course at the end, that this kid that always dresses up like Batman is going to it actually is revealed to be a girl. I'm assuming it's a girl. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't want to make a judgment. It looks like a young little blonde girl who.
Yeah, I think it is a girl.
Yeah, but a young. At first, I thought it was a young boy throughout the narrative, but it ends up being a girl that was fascinated by Batman, but now has realized that, hey, I can be a superhero. I don't need to be Batman. I can actually be Wonder Woman. So I think there's a nice message there that, what I mean. Because there were probably a day and age where more of the superhero stereotypes and prototypes were men, and so this young girl has an epiphany that, hey, wow, I can actually be a superhero, and I can be a Wonder Woman. I don't need to be Batman or Superman or someone else. So I thought that was a nice story, and it was warmed the heart a little bit. I agree with you about whatever happened to Kathy Perkins. That call back to the 1960s sort of spy thriller type of Wonder Woman. Cena Grace, I actually like that story. I agree with you that I would have Leo Romero's art. I didn't really feel quite appropriate for it. Mind you, the art that we got before of who was the artist? Steve Epting's art when we got the that he did of the other in the last issue of Wonder Woman Black and Gold, where he did this 1960s spy Wonder Woman era. I would have liked to have seen Step Epting here, but this was not a bad story. I didn't mind it. Yeah, again, I didn't have much to say. There was that one story. We should at least mention it. I'm trying to. Oh, Hypnota. I didn't quite understand what the point of the story was, and the art was really off to me. I had a really hard time getting into it. I didn't quite. I'm trying to find. Oh, Love Failed. It's called Art and Story by Andrew McLean. Edits by Diego Lopez. I didn't quite get it. It's not my cup of tea. This is the type of stories that I'm always questioning. This is such a diverse, such a eclectic artistic style. It was hard for me to get into this story, but in fairness, maybe somebody would like it. But I thought it was exposition heavy. It was far too wordy, and it didn't work for me. But overall, the Nicola Scott story, that prayer at the beginning with the hawk, is probably the best one, which you've already said quite a bit about. The art there was fantastic. And that alone, I would love to own a page. I would love to own a few of those original pages from Nicola Scott, but I don't think I could afford it.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right. Up next, I don't really have much to say about this one other than it didn't feel like it tied into Future State that much. So again, like when I talk about with Detective, why does Future State need to be as long as it is? Because it feels like we're wasting issues on it. But anyway, it's Harley Quinn number 7, Fear State Part 1. Stephanie Phillips is the writer, Riley Rossmo on art, Yvonne Placencia on colors, Darren Bennett on letters. There's humor here, and at least Stephanie Phillips always brings that to balance out the zaniness of Harley and the trauma that she's endured. So I always appreciate that, but I don't know, didn't feel like much happened. And Rosmo's art continues not to really do it for me. So I don't really have much more to say than that. It really feels like hardly anything happened in this issue. So
Yeah.
what did you think, Rocky?
Yeah, I got to agree. Not a lot happens in this issue. I continue to get slowly converted into Riley Rosmo's art. I don't mind it. I even like the I like the issue. I like the cover, Riley Rosmo cover here with Harley trying to reconnect with nature and a bear disrupting their outdoor picnic with Kevin, her sidekick Kevin, trying to fry a steak on a big pot. In any event, not much happens. Just to summarize, in this story, Hugo Strange manipulates Keepsake and into thinking that he needs Harley to find Poison Ivy in order to get full control of Gotham. Because we got the origin of Keepsake last issue, and Keepsake is basically a former employee of the Joker who was basically jealous of Harley. And Keepsake tried to recruit Harley as basically his sidekick last issue to no avail. And in this issue, Hugo Strange just manipulates Keepsake into thinking that, well, he really needs Harley in order to get Poison Ivy, because Poison Ivy, we know, is still under the streets of Gotham, and she's got her roots can control the underbelly of Gotham, and lots of people are looking for Harley. And meanwhile, Hugo Strange himself, dresses up as Batman and terrorizes people as dressed up like a goofy looking Batman, as obviously Hugo Strange dressed as Batman looks ridiculous. The humor in this story is Keepsake has his own group of villains: Polyphonist, Exclamation, Sage, Swine, Fellow Frigid, Blaine, which is a female goofy looking Blaine. He calls one lady, he ran out of names, so he called the one lady Sword Lady. I mean, just more kind of like nonsense and silliness, and you can have some fun with it. And at the end, Bella at the end, the gardener rescues Harley because for some reason Harley decides to go on a meditation retreat with Kevin and her group of clowns that she kind of recruited. They go on a meditation retreat, and they ends up getting interrupted by a bear, and it's kind of goofy. And I can appreciate what Stephanie Phillips is trying to do. She's trying to inject some zaniness and some humor into a scenario that really doesn't fit well with the concept of Fear State. I mean, Gotham is in a state of absolute abject terror right now because of Fear State, and here Harley is with her group meditating in a park. It's well, I mean, in that respect, it's kind of funny. It is something maybe you could see that's what Harley would do, but this is a very, very different type of Harley Quinn that we see scripted in the pages of Batman under Tinian, who is looking for Harley along with the gardener. Stephanie Phillips tries to tie those loose ends together because at the end of this issue, the gardener shows up in this issue having saved Harley, and the gardener wants to take Harley to go and to look for Poison Ivy, which really doesn't sync up very well with what's been going on in Batman. But I suppose you can, in our own headcanon, you can make it sync up, because while Batman and Ghostmaker have been doing their thing, I guess Harley and the gardener in Batman have been doing their thing as well. But we don't really see Kevin or Harley's group that we see here in the pages of Batman. So there's not a lot of there's not good synchronicity there. So, you know, but if you're enjoying the Harley comic, you can enjoy it the you can at least enjoy this probably separate and apart from Batman, because I can appreciate how hard it must be to write Harley Quinn in a humorous, nonsensical kind of setting and have fun with it while dealing with the subject matter like the Magistrate and Fear State, because those are two very different emotional templates there. But all in all, it's serviceable, but it's I'm hoping it'll get a little bit better.
Yeah, I mean, I want to read about Harley and Ivy. That part I'm curious about, but again, it's only 2 issues, I think, of each series for Fear State. Maybe it's 3. So it just seems like we didn't even get any Poison Ivy till right at the very end. So kind of strange.
Yeah.
All right, up next is a Black Label book. It's called Batman versus Bigby, A Wolf in Gotham. Book 1. It's written by Bill Willingham. We're reminded that he's the writer and creator of Fables. I guess that matters because it's a wolf story. I don't know. Brian Level handles the interior art. Jay Leistein does the inks. Lee Luffridge on colors. Yannick Paquette is the cover artist. Steve Wands does the letters. So I haven't read a lot of Bill Willingham's work. I sort of have a problem with his politics, but I went ahead and gave this a try because I was curious, honestly. It's definitely a different feel. Much like the Batman Reptilian story is a very different Batman. This is, again, a different version of Batman. He's a little more rigid, a little more by the numbers, a little more likely to bark orders at his Bat family team members. But there's a little bit of a lighter side to him. He can smirk at times. As far as the actual story, Bigby, werewolf kind of thing, we don't get much. We get some background into somebody's criminal organization, this Mr. Salinger. I guess that's going to tie into this werewolf at some point. So it's a little bit of a murder mystery. We don't know exactly who's behind these murders. They're thinking it's a wolf, but some of the evidence points away from the wolf, like the hair is not long enough. Why are the cameras smashed? This wouldn't just be a wolf. So obviously, if Batman doesn't know that it's a werewolf, so it's going to have some level of human intelligence, which kind of explains why things don't line up exactly right. As far as the art by Brian Level, it's a little stylized, very moody. It almost reminds me of like art from the 20s. It's a little mod, it's a little art deco. And so I think it's very detailed at times. So I think it very much suits the tone of the story that Bill Willingham is trying to tell. So all that to say, I was pleasantly surprised. This was better than I expected. I had pretty low expectations. But this was pretty good. It was pretty solid. So and I also didn't feel like with so many Batman comics that this is a story that is so focused on Batman and who Batman is and whatnot. Like this is a story where Batman gets plenty of real estate on the page, but he shares that equally with whether it be Gordon, whether it be the villains of the piece, whether it be some of the Bat family. Everybody gets a little bit of real estate. So I didn't feel like this was a huge amount of Batman and getting to know this version of Batman, much in the way that Garth Ennis, in the Batman Reptilian, which we didn't mention or haven't mentioned throughout, we're getting the sense that it's a different Batman, a harder edge Batman, but we're not beat over the head with it. We're not told. We pick it up through context, and it's the same way here. It's clear that this is a different version of Batman than we're used to, but it's all the clues are picked up in context. So yeah, I thought this was pretty solid. What did you think, Rocky?
I really enjoyed this. I'm a big Bill Willingham fan. I I'm not going to pretend to know much about his politics. So I don't know anything about that. I just know him as a writer. I loved his fables, and you never mentioned a lot of the fable references. Did you ever by chance read fables, Jace?
No, I've never read it.
Well, I'm telling you, man, it's awesome. I love it. I'm a huge Fables fan. And one of the things about there are so many Easter eggs in here for Fables fans. For fans who read Fables, you're really going to enjoy this. Just there's a quick reference in here, just so you know, in the Fables lore, Fables are any fairy tale creature. In this case, Bigby is the big bad wolf in Fables. And fables, if you're a fable, if you are a creature, if you are a fairy tale character, you're called a fable. Fables refer to human beings as Mundies. We are Mundies. So that's why Bigby refers to the Mundi, like the Mundi world. And that's why Bigby was so impressed that Batman could actually track him, because it's not too often that a Mundi can track the big bad wolf. So that's what he meant there in some of these comments. Lieutenant Molly Grace in this issue is someone who's helping Commissioner Gordon investigate the wolves. I suspect Lieutenant Molly Grace might be Red Rose, who is Snow White's sister. I'm not sure. I also suspect that this beautiful brunette in red might be Snow White. I'm curious. These murders that are taking place that are killed seemingly by a wolf or a giant wolf, it's taken place during the literary festival where over 200 authors are visiting Gotham City from around the world. And of course, fables are characters within books, and they gain their power. The more you believe in a fable, the more powerful that fable is. That's why Snow White is hard to kill, because she can always come back. Because you can kill Snow White, but because so many people believe in her and read her stories, she's hard to kill. So the more popular a fable, the more powerful it is. That's why Bigby, the big bad wolf, is so powerful as well. So that's a sort of a snapshot of the gist of the mythology of the fables. So that's why it's so fascinating here to see who is this Mr. Salinger. And you'll note that a lot of the characters in here have names of famous authors. Even Stephen King is referenced here. This Mr. Salinger. There's a guy named Charles Ostergaard. He's the curator. Mrs. Stacks. I think she might be Snow White. It starts off mentioning a Mr. Austin is retiring. Is that a reference to maybe a Jane Austen? I'm not really sure. This is all focusing around an incident called Operation Alexandria. There's something's going on here. Batman ends up capturing Bigby, big bad wolf at the end, and Bigby, he wakes up in the Batcave. And one thing about fables, Bigby is the most sarcastic bastard on the planet. He's always smoking, and he's so sarcastic, and he's very arrogant as to his abilities. And the fact that Batman got one up on him, I'm sure he just probably makes him chuckle. Bigby clearly held back when Batman attacked him, because Bigby is very powerful, and it's probably going to be the last time Batman gets one up on Bigby until they inevitably team up to deal with the bad guys here. But this is a lot of fun. If you're a fan of Fables and Batman, boy, this is a must. And this is classic Bill Willingham. I'm really enjoying it. And if you even just like this issue a little bit, Jace, I'm confident that, I have trust in Bill Willingham. There'll be a lot more to enjoy moving forward, because he generally doesn't put a heck of a lot of politics in his comic books anyway, at least not in my experience with Fables anyway.
Yeah, and I've never heard that about him. But man, sometimes it's tough to support those guys who are spouting nonsense. Anyway, on to the last book for this week that we're going to talk about. We mentioned it earlier. It's Superman, Son of Kal-El, #3. From writer Tom Taylor. I'm looking for the credits page here. Sorry, everybody. The art should be by John Timms. Yep, there it is. Gabe Eltab is the colorist. Dave Sharpe handles the letters. It's called The Truth. I don't know. I have mixed feelings about this run. I'm a huge fan of Tom Taylor. I think he's extremely talented, but I've said it before. Superman is his favorite character. He's talked about how he finally gets to write Superman. He's not writing Superman. He's writing John Kent, and John Kent is not Superman, despite the fact that DC editorial wants to shoehorn him into that role that we're reminded at again and again and again in this comic. I'm just not liking this. It's not speaking to me. I'm sick and tired of hearing John Kent say, "But Dad, I went to the future. I saw the future. I know you're going to die. I know you're going to die. I know you're going to die." Ma Kent says it best to John Kent in this issue where she says, "No, he's always come back. I believe in him." John Kent doesn't even believe in his own father. Like, with everything you've seen, John Kent, with the time traveling you've done and being trapped in a volcano and being gone for 3 weeks but coming back to Earth and being 5 years older. Yeah. Like, you can't think that there's a multiverse. There's an omniverse. Maybe the future you were in was one possible future. You got to have some faith that your dad's going to come back. Like, that doesn't ring true for me. Like, yes, would I be scared that my dad wasn't going to come back? Yeah, I might harbor that. But would I keep beating a dead horse? No, I wouldn't, because what's the point of that? What's the point of living in that fear? So I don't know. There's just so many things that aren't working for me. This just feels so editorially driven. Don't get me wrong, I'd love to have Tom Taylor write a Superman book. This is not a Superman book. John Kent, like, I don't care if you artificially aged him up. I don't care if you think he's ready to handle the mantle of Superman based on where he is in the DC universe right now. He simply is not. The character hasn't been around long enough. He hasn't been developed long enough. He hasn't had enough stories. He hasn't had enough maturity. He hasn't had enough growth. He hasn't had, and I'm talking about publishing history and publishing maturity. It feels forced. It feels wrong, and I'm not really caring for it. And normally, it's enough that Tom King is writing it, and Tom Taylor, one of us in terms of Tom Taylor, right? Yeah. Tom Taylor's writing this. He's one of us. He's a huge fan of DC. He's a huge fan of Superman, and that should be enough. But it's not. There's just too many problems editorially with the mandates and what's going on. And, like, I even would feel better about it if you just called it Superboy, even with him aged up. Just call it Superboy. But the fact that we're supposed to be convinced and we're supposed to be buying into the fact that John is Kal-El's replacement, that puts expectations, that puts a certain connotation on the title that I feel isn't John, first of all, doesn't deserve, as much as I like the character. And it puts expectations, and I just don't like it. I don't like it. Call this Superboy. That's what it is. It's a Superboy title. And because a lot of the ideas are cool, I loved the whole interaction with John's friend Jay and Lois Lane. I thought that was fantastic. I liked how Bendix turned what's her name, Faultline, turned her into a weapon to use against John. Obviously, they know that Superman has just left Earth. They wait till he leaves, and then they weaponize Faultline. God only knows how they got her out of Star Labs, where Superman had just dropped her off. So there's good here. But the problem is that the editorial dictates and the artificially aging up of John, which felt so forced, and now you're going to compound that by now forcing us to believe he's Superman? No, I'm not buying. Maybe in the context of 5G it would have worked because it would have been everybody. Everybody would have got replaced in terms of the older heroes, and now we're looking at the new generation. Would have been a time jump. I mean, we don't know enough about what 5G would have been to say, but I feel like that would have fit better. But again, between what happened in Justice League, what happened in Action Comics, and now what we're getting in here in Superman, Son of Kal-El, it all just feels so forced. It's not organic at all. It's so clear that this is just editorial saying, shake things up for the sake of shaking them up. Like, if you would have got here organically by telling an actual Superman story, yeah, I'd buy it. But when and again, I talked about this at the time, Bendis didn't want to write a Superman story where Superman was married and had a kid. So he just took them off the page by sending them out into deep space. Then when he was ready, I still don't really Like, I think I figured out who Lois Lane is, but I still don't write a comic book about a little kid. So I'll just age him up to where I need him to be. Again, super forced. And now we're stuck here. And yeah, I mean, I know I sound like a broken record complaining about John being aged up again, but look at what it's led to.
Yeah.
This it just feels so fake. It just doesn't feel. It doesn't feel like the DC universe, honestly. So I want to like it because I'm a fan of Tom Taylor, but there's just too many things where I find myself shaking my head and going, no, it doesn't feel authentic. I don't know why I'm supposed to care about this version of John Kent, because honestly, he just comes across as insincere and a little bit of a baby, constantly whining about my dad's never going to be back. My dad's never going to be back. Well, if you really truly believe that, if you as Superman's son can't even believe in Superman, why should the rest of us? First of all, because apparently even I believe in Superman more than you do, John Kent, and I know Superman's not real. But if you can't get beyond that, then maybe you can just step up and go and accept it. Okay, I believe my dad's never coming back. Then actually step into the role of Superman, which he actually, I'll give Tom Taylor credit. He does have a few moments here and there where he does step up, particularly in this issue where he gets himself arrested. And it leads to some classic kind of Tom Taylor humorous moments. I did hard time in there, Dad. You were in there for 45 minutes. Yeah, it was 45 minutes of hard time behind bars. Yeah, so, I mean, there are things to like. This is still Tom Taylor. He's a good writer. But I just feel like he's being so handicapped by the situation that DC has put him in with where Superman is at. And it's unfortunate. You know, Superman's my favorite character, and I can't remember the last time we got good Superman stories. It's kind of like the same thing with what Marvel's doing with Hulk. And not to say Immortal Hulk wasn't a good story, but at some point you just want to return back to the status quo and just get some good Hulk stories, right? But instead we went from Immortal Hulk to now Donny Cates' Cosmic Hulk. We've gone from, you know, this John Kent aged up Superman family nonsense we have now. Before this we had Bendis. You know, it's been so long. It's been, what, 5 years since we've had some what I'll call quote unquote normal Superman stories in the actual Superman books. At some point you got to swing it back and give us some normal stories just to remind us of who Superman is. So I don't know. I'll get off my soapbox now.
That's all right, man.
It was so up. I want to like this. I want to like this title, but there's just, I see so many problems with it. It's not speaking to me at all.
Well, it's funny because I actually find myself, I think I'm a little bit ahead of the curve, slightly ahead of you, in that I'm slowly getting over my trauma in terms of what they did to aging up John Kent. Once I'm slowly, it's sort of, I feel like I'm going through the 5 stages of grief, losing young John Kent, and I'm finally I'm slowly getting to acceptance, just a little bit faster than you are. So, because I will say this, I actually think that Superman titles right now I think Action Comics, I think is firing on all cylinders now. PKJ, I like Warworld, and I didn't mind this issue I didn't mind this issue. I actually thought it's okay. Now, the fact of the matter is that we may not like that John Kent is aged up, and we know it wasn't organically developed, but guess what? He's aged up. This is the reality. In light of that, Tom Taylor has to work with that, and this is consistent with the other story. Superman is going off to Warworld, and his son, it's his dad, and his dad, he knows his dad might die, and he knows he can't stop his dad, and he's very powerful. He's arguably more powerful than his dad, and his dad doesn't want his help, doesn't want him to come. His dad has given him the responsibility to stay on Earth, and that's what he's doing. But he doesn't feel he has a lot of agency yet. He's still trying to find his way, this John Kent. And in many ways, I think, if I'm really cutting the character some slack here, not only do we, the readers, not really have a lot of faith in this John Kent, because he's young. He's younger than he looks because he was aged up. But John Kent himself, I think, lacks a certain degree of confidence in himself, and yet he's trying to find his way. He's being civilly disobedient. He's breaking the law. He is making decisions. He's not afraid to rock the boat. His father's given him the leeway to do that, and he's already pissed off the wrong people. As soon as his dad leaves, President Henry Bendix of the island of Gomorrah drops fault line on the Kent farm, and it looks like it completely blows up. So it looks like the SHIT has really hit the fan by the end of this year. He's really made an enemy of Henry Bendix. That's what young John Kent has done. And I think this has the makings of a good story here. This is a real test of John Kent, because he's got someone from another country is going to be utilizing and pushing the boundaries, and he knows how to push the buttons of John Kent. And this is a young kid who probably he knows is trying to find his way. I think there's so much potential here to really get under the skin of John Kent and test this character. And I think that there's a little bit of maybe even indirect breaking of the fourth wall, insofar as I have some resentment of this character too, but I feel a little bit bad if I'm going to be expecting that Tom Taylor to work a miracle here. I mean, look, he was handed this character aged up, and he's got to work with it. I actually don't mind this. I think the story is actually not bad. I'm not really sure if we'd call this. I prefer. I agree with you on one point. You made a good point that we should maybe call him Superboy. Calling him Superboy would be better. I actually think that's a good point. That I almost think this is like the Jedi trials of a young Padawan go through the Jedi trials, and if you make it, you're a Jedi. You know, it's like, he's not a Jedi yet. John Kent, he's not a Jedi. He's not Superman. These are his trials. You know what I mean? Defeat Henry Bendix and a Jedi you will be, or something to that effect. You know, let him.
I agree.
Yeah, let him earn the mantle, as opposed to, instead of just hand him the name son of Superman. Well, you know, let him earn it. And so maybe this should have been the trials of Superboy, or give it a name or something like that. In any event, but at the end of the day, those are, I think, more issues of semantics. At the end of the day, does the story work for me? I'm actually entertained. I'm really curious to know what Henry Bendix has in mind. Henry Bendix just seems like a jerk. He thinks he can push this John Kent around. Let's see. He's testing John Kent here. I mean, he wants to wipe out the family farm, and it looks like he did. I'm really curious to see where this goes. So I'm not quite as pessimistic as you are on this, but we shall see.
Yeah, well, I mean, I said as much, that there are good aspects to the story. The problem is that the situation that DC put Tom Taylor in, that he has to address those elephants in the room. He has to talk about John Kent having that knowledge of his father dying. He has to talk about the fact, it's that trauma. That's really what we're talking about. Like, whatever it might be, whether it's knowledge of his father's death, whether it's him being aged up, being stuck in a volcano, tortured by a person with his father's face, whatever the trauma is, because DC decided to put this poor little kid through this trauma, it's got to be addressed. And it's getting in the way of Tom Taylor telling a good story. Because, like you said, the bones of the good story are there with Bendix, with his friend Jay, with, like I love when he gets involved with the social causes, right? Because it's so authentic to John Kent's generation. And maybe a little bit rubbed off on his father, and that's why Superman went and took the Genesis fragment. So yeah, there are things to like here, but again, it bothers me that it has to be all mashed up with all the crap editorially. So maybe if it goes on long enough, that stuff can be left behind. But I don't know. I'm curious. It's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. What happens after War World? When Superman comes back, then what? Yeah. Do we have two Supermen?
Good question.
I don't know. Maybe it's all going to get worked out with the big Infinite Frontier Crisis, or whatever they're going to call it, that's coming next year. Could they possibly de-age John Kent? And would there then be an outcry for the fans of John Kent that fall in love with him in this series that go, well, why'd you de-age him? He was so great at the older age. Which again, it goes back to just, I think, what a horrible call that is, because now I think you can't win either, no matter what you do. If you leave him aged up, which I think that's probably what they'll do, you're always going to have people that lament the fact that we missed out on some great stories and some great emotional development, father-son stories, Superman family stories. If you de-age him, you're going to have people that, loved him, this social justice warrior version of John Kent, that are going to lament that, well, why did you turn him into a little kid again? You had already created all this development for him. So I don't know. I mean, it's a lesson to all you publishers out there. Don't make these kind of decisions that you've painted yourself into a corner and that you can't win no matter what you do.
Yeah, no, I agree.
You're gonna piss off fans no matter what you do. So, anyway, that is it for the books.
I'm actually curious. I wonder what's your pick of the week?
My pick of the week. That is a good question. You know what? It's actually, now that I stop and think about it, it's actually not that tough. I'm going to go with Icon and Rocket. I thought that was absolutely fantastic. It was relevant, had some great sort of relevant political aspects to it, and the art was fantastic, well paced. Yeah, I'll go with Icon and Rocket.
Yeah, I gotta go with that too. That was definitely my favorite. So we'll just move that up there. And what's the worst? Most disappointing?
The worst? It's got to be Checkmate. Checkmate. The fact that you have a good Justice League Dark story elevates Justice League. So, yeah, definitely Checkmate.
Yeah.
What about you? What was the worst?
Yeah, Icon and Rocket, I really, really liked. I got to give honorable mention to Action Comics and Batman v Bigby. I really enjoyed that. The Checkmate was definitely disappointing. I also got to go for disappointment. I have to go with Justice League 68 was disappointing as well.
Yeah, agreed. Okay. Anything you want to shout out for coverage? Again, I apologize, everybody. I really want to get back to releasing more than 3 episodes a week, but work continues to be, the day job continues to be a bear. And then this last week I was traveling for a funeral for a death in the family, so I really haven't had time to read many comics, let alone make any extra content. So what about you, Rocky? Anything to shout out?
Well, I still have a really busy day at work. I do have some. Joshua Williamson just today on the beat, he gave an interview on Justice League Incarnate, which is the second act following Infinite Frontier, his Infinite Frontier series. Justice League Incarnate is Act 2, and then it'll be followed by an Act 3. So I do have thumbnails. I do want to give an overview of Infinite Frontier. Hopefully I'll get to it by the end of the week, but it's looking pretty busy at work, so I can't promise anything either. But I'm just so glad that I can review these DC comics with you every week, and I can plan it because it's the most enjoyment I have reading comics. So thank you for that.
Yeah, my pleasure. So don't forget, everybody, if you're listening to us on the podcast, head over to YouTube, subscribe to the Comic Boom channel. Be sure you give this episode a like and ring that notification bell so you know when Rocky puts out new content. Conversely, if you're watching us on YouTube and want to check out the other weekly episodes that we put out, just go to your favorite podcast platform or app and do a search for the Comic Source. You can find us there and subscribe so you don't miss any episodes. So once again, Rocky and I appreciate the support. Thanks for joining us, everybody, and we'll talk to you next time.
See you later.
Mm-hmm.